Mr. Coleman, how are you?
I would like to call this Board of Adjustment to order.
Oh, we gotta do that first?
Yeah, we are down 2 commissioners, but for personal reasons, but we can move forward with the 3 that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gonna save the invocation and the pledge for the commission meeting. So with that being said, can I have an approval for the agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion moved by Commissioner Coleman and then a second by Commissioner Monty Farnsworth. Do we have any comments or questions on the board?
No, sir.
Any public comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion moved by Monty,
It'll be a busy night.
Commissioner Monty, and I have a second by Commissioner Coleman. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Now, this is gonna take us to our agenda for the night, and we are gonna be entering into quasi judicial. So, Madam Attorney, could you enter us into quasi judicial and explain what that means?
Absolutely. So we are entering quasi-judicial. We have one quasi-judicial hearing today before the board. This means that the commission and the board stops being a legislative body. You become a judicial board, and you have to follow certain special rules, different than the special rules that we generally adhere to. You have a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule you have to follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when you make a decision. That standard is that all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. I am now going to read into the record the one resolution that the board has before them tonight. This is resolution number 2023-23, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, considering an application for a special exception to permit a church in an existing meeting hall building within a residential single-family RSF2 zoning district as authorized under section 4.5.5 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. At this point, anyone who is planning on speaking regarding this resolution, please stand so you may be sworn in.
John Paul Perez.
All right, before we begin, I'm going to ask the board to disclose any ex parte communications and whether any of the members of the board physically inspected the property. Ex parte communications are conversations or transmissions of information that may have any bearing or influence on any of the voting members' decisions. Does anyone have anything to disclose? Mr. Coleman?
None.
All right. Generally speaking, the way that we'll go through the quasi-judicial today, staff will give their overview, the applicant will make their presentation, staff will present their report and recommendation, third-party interveners, which I do not believe we have any tonight. Then we'll go to public comment. The public will have 3 minutes. The applicant may then cross-examine, party interveners may cross-examine, the staff may cross-examine. The members of the board may ask questions. Final argument will be made by the applicant. And then staff, the city attorney, me, will advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application, as I've done earlier. You'll have a deliberation, and then a vote will be taken.
Good. Thank you, Attorney. So now we're gonna have the staff overview.
Thank you. John Paul Perez with the City of Newberry Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is for a special exception in a single-family residential RSF2 zoning district. Oh, thank you. The owner is Pat Post. The agent is the Citadel Family Church, which is the church that will be located at the site. The site address is 145 Northwest 257th Street, right around the corner here. And, oh wow. Trying to get back to my location map to show the location of the property. There we go. Yeah, so it's located at the northeast corner of 257th and Northwest First Ave. That is the overview. The applicant is here to give a brief presentation, and then staff will give their presentation thereafter and their recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Aurelius Garrison. I am the pastor of the Citadel Family Church. Again, just looking to come and join the community and work alongside you all to better serve and help serve the citizens of Newberry. As all. I have some questions now, are y'all done? Okay. Thank you.
All right, part of a special exception are certain criteria. Staff has reviewed the criteria and finds that the special exception request meets all of those, or satisfies all of the criteria in a positive manner. Just gonna give you some context of the request. Here's an image of the property. Looking from the southwest corner of the intersection. Here's the south elevation of the building, where you can see some openings that have been bricked up over the years. It's believed that that was part of the Masonic Lodge's improvements to the property when they were housed there. Yes. This is a close-up of that south elevation where the sign used to be and a new sign will be going. Full disclosure, staff has received a request for an administrative approval of a certificate of appropriateness for replacing that sign, so it'll be same size, same type of lettering, et cetera. No real change in the actual design of the sign that was previously there. This is an image showing the previous sign that was there. This is the west elevation or the front of the building. So you can see here, this is the area that was generally used for parking in the past, as well as part of the south part of the lot was used for parking. Here's the southwest property. This is purportedly where the pastor of the old Methodist church that used to be in this building lived. And that completes my presentation.
Does the applicant have any cross-examination?
We'll take public comment first.
Anybody from the public have any comments? Okay. So do you want a cross-examination? Remember the decision-making board.
Couple questions. Are there going to be any activities outside of the building?
To be a bit more specific, when you say activities.
Are you going to have like church revival? Or
Oh, no,
type of
all of our
revival thing?
services will take, all of the services relating to the church will be inside of the building. If this is approved tonight, we are planning to do a barbecue to introduce ourselves to the city, things like that. Now, recreational stuff will be done outside, maybe at the park. Was told that the park was a good place to do it, but if we did anything on property, it will probably be just this weekend, if this is approved, when this is approved, to do just as a barbecue or a fish fry, just to introduce ourselves to the community. As far as service and things like that, that's done inside. I know a lot of people believe in like tent revivals and all that stuff. I think it's good, but we have a building for it. We're gonna
Okay.
use the building for that. And also, one of the, in consideration for the neighbors, to have service outside would be loud, and so.
Yeah,
So certainly gonna
that's
have
what,
it inside. No exterior speakers, nothing like that.
you just have regular church services, I guess.
Just
or
regular old church services.
I know you're like a 24/7 ministry going on there.
No, sir. I don't. No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Questions?
Question for the staff. Were the neighbors duly notified of the change?
Yes, so there was a notice sent out for all neighbors within 400 feet. I did actually walk the property and had a chance to speak with a few of the neighbors myself, so, yeah.
Any kind of opposition?
There were some questions at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting about volume of music, et cetera. The Pastor Garrison had a pretty adequate response that, acoustics will be controlled by running it through a single sound system. So, acoustic instruments like drums won't be heard throughout the neighborhood. They'll have the ability to control that with the use of electronic drums. And that's about all I recall from the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. What's that?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Oh, parking, yeah, parking as well. And the response from Pastor Garrison was that right now he has a very small ministry. He said it's about 4 families or about 10 people's total. Has been parking on, those spots in the front of the building as well as on the south lot.
I'm sure they're hoping to increase that number.
Right, so that would be a good problem necessarily for him. I'm not necessarily, it'd be a good problem for the neighborhood, but as, organizations like that grow, usually that's a pretty small building, so if they do grow, they'll probably move out of that building pretty quickly.
And if they do move out of the building, does the special exception go away, or how does that work?
It does. That's why we're here today. I believe it was originally a Methodist church and then became a Masonic lodge. The Masonic lodge has not been in operation for a period of more than 6 months. For that reason, any new use that's considered a special exception under the zoning code has to go through that scrutiny once again. But if they, continue that use, say Mr. Garrison grows, needs a new location, and another church comes in within 6 months of the ceasing of his operation, they could just move in and assume that special exception.
I'm old enough to remember there was actually a church there on that property where the land is now. And as a kid, we used to go up there, and we had to go there to get our polio vaccines. It's been a while. And
That church has been there since the 1800s.
yeah, at least.
Wow.
And we did Boy Scouts in there too, so
Mr.
I
Chair,
remember I didn't do well in Boy Scouts.
I'm ready to. I just want to let you know that Pastor also at the P&Z informed that he's in talks with the First Baptist Church about maybe being able to allow some parking there and on-street parking, all those kinds of things. So we did talk about the noise of the music and being respectful of the neighbors and all that kind of stuff as well, so.
I had a question. So, because when the twin pairs, is this going to affect the district overlay at all with this building if he adds on, or?
This is actually in the historic district, so yeah, different set of regulations.
All right, do we have any final arguments? Anything you heard that you want to cross-examine?
Clear up I want to be clear on the parking. The parking, there's a lot across the street that we have the information of the gentleman that owns it. We would be willing to enter an agreement with him that we clear it off and we can park there, and again, speak with the church there to mitigate parking. At no point will we park in front of people's houses. We're not here to be a nuisance. We're not here to infringe on the lives and of the citizens or of the people that live in the neighborhood. We simply want to come in, blend in, and be a help to the people. But the parking, it would be a nice thing if it became a problem. And we have solutions for the problem. The sound, I'm aware of the sound and mindful of the sound, and we're not a loud church. When I preach, this is my presentation. For as much as I want to be like the evangelist that hoop and holler, I wish that I would that his bank would confuse me, but no, this is my presentation. This is what I have, So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Well, hang on. Busy at it, buddy, come on now. Now, the attorney will advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application.
Any decision made by this board today needs to be supported by competent, substantial evidence.
Thank you. Now, we're going to enter into deliberations of this application. If there's no deliberations, then I will entertain a motion. I have a motion first by Commissioner Coleman, and a second by Monty Farnsworth. Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? That's it. I guess that's it. All that's in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Congratulations, you have a church.
Welcome.
And we are adjourned.
Go anywhere though.
I'm going to the house, done.
Let's go. You wanna go?
Yeah.
Let's go.
1970, yeah,
Not yet.
sweet tea and
We're gonna go ahead and call this regularly scheduled March 13th, wait a minute, I'm looking at the redevelopment agency. No, I'm not. No, I'm on the right one. Regularly scheduled commission meeting to order. Sorry for the confusion there. We got 3 meetings tonight, so we're trying to keep them all straight. You've got the agendas in front of you, gentlemen. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda
Approve.
as it was published? I have a motion from Commissioner Mazon.
second.
Second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Hear none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. We're gonna like to welcome Pastor Diamond to the podium. We're gonna stand for the pledge, and if you would, now it's not on this one, right? We're gonna do the invocation first. If you would, stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge afterwards. Pastor Diamond, you were headed in the right direction. Welcome back, sir.
Sounds good, thank you. All right, let's pray. Dear Father, thank you for giving us the chance to be here tonight. Thank you for our city of Newberry and what it represents for us. I pray for these commissioners as they work on our behalf, that their decisions would be guided by you and that you would bless the city through their efforts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Diamond. We appreciate you. All right, we have a couple of presentations tonight. First up is our Government Finance Professionals Week. And I think, Dallas, are you going to take us through that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. As the commission will recall, we present a departmental overview every year based on our week. So I'm going to go through just a quick overview of the Finance and Administration Department before you proclaim us wonderful.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. I can only con 2 of my team members into showing up tonight, so I've got 2 finance staffers in the back. But the finance department is generally divided into 4 different operating areas between finance and accounting, customer service, human resources, and administration. We have 12 employees, last I counted. 4 devoted to your finance and administration operations, 1 in your HR operation, 3 in customer service, and then we have purchasing support, project management support, and staff assistant support. Here is a picture of your utterly professional at all times finance and administration department. So going into those multiple roles that we provide for the city, in our finance and accounting area, we obviously provide financial advice and guidance to both the city commission, the mayor, manager, and department heads. We prepare your financial statements. We prepare quarterly reports to the city commission on financial matters to keep you abreast of where the city is. Obviously, we ensure adherence to GAAP and GASB, which are the generally accepted accounting principles in the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. One of our most visible items that we prepare is your annual budget. This year's annual budget across both operating and capital is a little over $34 million. So we administer both the process to build that budget and the workshops, and then once the commission's adopted it, we ensure compliance to that budget and report on that budget to you and to the state. We oversee your debt, we monitor budget amendments, ensure truth and millage compliance, and prepare and monitor your capital improvement plans. On the treasury and disbursement side underneath finance, we pay all your bills and collect all of your money. So last year, we paid $20.2 million in payments. That was representative of 8,101 invoices that we processed. And we paid those on just shy of 4,000 individual payments to our vendors. We are also the reason all of your employees come to work because we process your payroll. So last year, we processed 26 payrolls for 167,000 hours of work.
I think our employees would show up even if they weren't getting paid.
It is payroll week, we can test that theory.
I mean, at least for a day, right? At least for one
Until
day,
the check
until we
didn't clear
found
on
out,
Thursday.
right?
So last year, we paid just over $4.1 million in employee wages and $1.6 million in benefits and taxes. We also provide your debt management services. Currently, the City Commission has 3 long-term debts for just over $2 million. As the Commission's aware, this is becoming a much more complex part of our financial situation due to the wastewater treatment plan and some of the complex projects that the Commission's taking on. We also do your purchasing. We ensure compliance to the city's adopted policies. Last year, we issued 914 purchase orders and issued 8 competitively sealed bids. We also do grant administration, so we search for and apply for grants, and then once those grants are awarded, we administer and monitor grants for compliance. In our customer service and billing department, we provide customer service not only for utilities, but for all aspects of the city. We are the first line of defense, so to speak, in terms of customer service for our residents. Last year, we answered a little more than 13,000 phone calls. We billed and distributed about 34,000 individual utility bills and collected payments on those 34,000 utility bills. We opened 427 new utility accounts. We obviously last year implemented AMI, so we used a lot of time to assist our customers in understanding AMI and how they could use it to their best advantage. We collect payments. Just so everybody knows, we currently accept cash checks, money orders, credit cards. You can pay us online, you can pay us over the phone, you can do auto draft, EFT draft. You can call us at 2 a.m. on a Saturday and pay us. We do have a 24/7 call center, so we can answer any support needs.
Can I pay on the app?
You cannot pay on the app.
But
There's
I
a
can
link
get
to the website.
To the website on
Yes,
the
sir.
app.
Or if you don't pay, the next one is what you.
And you know,
And now
Dallas,
we can turn you off from our office.
Dallas, you have glasses. I don't know why you need such a grossly large font on these, right? I mean,
'Cause it-
you could go down to 8, right?
It irks the city manager, and so
No.
it's a little bit.
Okay.
We also provide education to your customers on conservation. That was a really big concern of ours last year with the increases in natural gas prices. So we do provide free leak detection kits to all of our customers. So if you think you have a water leak, we'll provide you information and a detection kit. We also provide free in-home and over-the-phone energy audits. So we encourage you to go on our website or give us a call if you'd like an energy audit. Those are provided to all of our customers for free once a year. And one bullet point I don't have on here in terms of conservation is please give us a call. We'll be happy to go over your energy usage and show you how to use your AMI portal to learn how to conserve and lower your utility bill. In administrative services, we also provide your information technology needs. We currently maintain 8 different servers and 77 workstations. We assist your departments in all of their IT needs and oversee our outsourced contracts. We do public administration, or public information and relations. So we manage your social media pages. We maintain the emergency communication network, or reverse 911 for when there are storm events. We prepare flyers and different communications for our residents. And we maintain the C-Click Fix or Newberry Florida Connect app. And then we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including administering and reviewing contracts, doing labor negotiations, and helping with special events. We also have a human resources department. So we maintain all of your HR records.
Whose axe is that?
That is former Fire Chief Ben Buckner's.
Man, I missed that ceremony. That's an awesome axe.
Good axe.
Yeah.
So we administer all the employee benefits packages, we onboard employees, we follow up with employees, we maintain your retirement plans and packages, we monitor workplace culture, work with departments to ensure that we have the best work environment we can. Annually, we negotiate and administer all your insurance plans, both for the employees and for the city, so our workers' compensation and general liability plans. We recruit and hire your new employees. Last year, we hired 38 new employees. And then we do a whole heck of a lot of reporting, W-2s, 1095s, FRS, unemployment, 941, EEOC, and. So there's a lot of reporting in HR, but.
When I retire, can I get a gavel that big? Like this?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Sledgehammer.
We were gonna name the wastewater plant after you.
Yes.
So to review some of Finance and Administration's accomplishments from 2022, as always, our most proud and biggest accomplishment is we received a clean audit opinion, and we received the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate in Excellence for Financial Reporting, which I believe was our 4th year receiving it. We completed the Community Visioning and Strategic Plan. We implemented a paperless AP approval system, implemented online benefits administration for our employees, replaced and upgraded our failing phone system, we implemented AMI, we completed the impact fee study, we launched Newberry Florida Connect, we won 2 FERDAP grants, and then our goals for 2023 are to finish impact fees, which is on the agenda tonight. We have an actuarial study that's ongoing that is a lot of work and produces a lot of numbers that no one cares about, but we have to do it. We're currently in negotiations.
We care, Dallas. We care.
Sure. I don't even care about it. We are currently negotiating your fire union contract. We are also continuing to work on the succession plan that the commission directed us to work on last year. And then we are working on a 10-year CIP with a funding plan for each of the major items to have a strong funding plan for your major capital outlays coming up. That is the finance department.
Wow. What can I possibly say to wrap all that up? That was impressive.
Where's the proclamation?
Thank you.
Yeah, I got it right here. I got it texted to me. Yeah. So, before I read this proclamation in to celebrate, any comments, questions for Dallas? I mean, it's exhausting to hear about all the things they do in summary. And certainly at the end of the day, keeping those paychecks flowing, keeping our citizens, our residents happy, keeping our employees happy helps keep our residents happy. Anybody?
Yeah, I'm going there. Good
Commissioner
job,
Mazzone.
Dallas. Good job, staff. Doing a phenomenal job. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you.
Thank you. I would be remiss to say I have done almost none of these things. The majority of this is done by my excellent team. I've got 12 really good professionals who work for us, who are dedicated to the city of Newberry, and it's my pleasure to work with them every day.
And was this a bet? Like if you got 2 FERDAP grants, you cut your hair off? Or that one, and you kept on growing?
Yeah, I was going to just shave half.
Okay, all right. Well, with that being said, let me offer the following proclamation into the record. Whereas the Florida Government Finance Officers Association is a professional association founded in 1937 and serves more than 3,300 professionals from state, county, and city government, school districts, colleges and universities, special districts, and private firms. And whereas the FOA is dedicated to being your professional resource by providing opportunities through education, networking, leadership, and information. And whereas this Government Finance Professionals Week, sponsored by the
FGFOA.
Sure, and all of its member governmental organizations, is a week-long series of activities aimed at recognizing government finance professionals and the vital services that they provide to our state and our community. And whereas during this week, government finance professionals throughout the state of Florida will be acknowledged for their hard work, dedication, and leadership. Now, therefore, I, Jordan Marlowe, Mayor of the City of Newberry, and on behalf of the City Commission, now proclaim March 20th through 24th, 2023 as Government Finance Professionals Week in the City of Newberry, and extend our appreciation to all government finance professionals throughout the state and here in our city for their hard work, dedication, and leadership, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 13th day of March 2023, and attested by the clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Miss Judy S. Rice, City Clerk. Dallas. Shall we get a picture with the staff? Who's gonna take it now that you're? Dallas, you gotta be front
Oh, I
and
got it.
center here. Yeah, you're the leader of the pack.
Portrait. That's good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're always in the picture. One last comment before we move off of that. It truly is a pleasure to know that your financial house is in order. And the ability for us to say for the last 2 years, 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row, that we've achieved the highest level in the nation for transparency. That's what our residents want, right? Whether we agree, disagree with what we're doing, we just want to know that it is being spent on our community in the ways that we allocate through these processes. So thank you and your team for doing that. One more presentation. This is Brian going to come up and talk to us about the restructuring of the Planning, Zoning, Historic Architectural Review Board appointments, commission seat election schedule. So we got a slightly different process that you guys gave direction on a little while ago. We're going to update and just make sure we're all on the same page about how that's going to play out. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you stated, this was a result of direction from the commission recently, and this is bringing it back before you to make sure that we got all the elements that you wanted before we turn it into an ordinance at the next meeting for your first reading. Currently, Planning and Zoning and Historical Architectural Review Boards are appointed for 3-year terms. They are not aligned with any part of the city's election cycle. As you may remember, Planning and Zoning Board members, when they're appointed, automatically are also members of the Historic Architectural Review Board. And you also have 2 floating members to try on the HARB to try to fill specific expertise that we might be looking for. So we might be looking for an architect or a historic preservationist or something along those lines that we can't fill necessarily locally. That allows us to bring a little extra expertise on. Each of the 2 boards independently do elect their own chair and vice chair, and staff acts as the secretary for the meetings and provides draft meeting minutes.
We begin with that deadly flooding emergency right here in Cal.
It's an emergency.
The proposed changes that the commission directed staff to go back and draft, under that scenario, each planning and zoning and HARB member would be assigned to a specific commissioner's seat. And so we would be going from a 3-year appointment cycle for PZ and HARB to a 2-year cycle, just like the commission. The appointments will be made and approved by the commission as a whole, though. There had been some talk about each commissioner picking their own. The commission didn't seem to actually like that idea too much, so the entire commission will still vote on each of the candidates as they come up for each seat. The commission also directed staff to advertise the position as we usually, or the openings as we already do, but then to take those and vet them and then come back based on the evaluation of the qualifications, give a ranking, staff ranking to the commissioners to help them perhaps make a decision. And then once that's done and it's time for the actual appointments, the commission will then do a simple vote on each seat, one right after the other, and getting through those until each seat that's open is filled. And the ex officio non-voting mayor will serve as the chair for both boards. And this is just the chart that shows you how that breaks down. So each of the seats and how they're assigned to each of the commissioner groups and HARB to the mayor. So because we have 2 extra seats for the HARB, one will be on the mayor's schedule and one will be on Group 1 schedule. We'll just have 2 HARB seats open for that Group 1 schedule.
Anytime.
And with that, staff would request any additional direction from the commission. And then, if none, or if there is additional, it'll be incorporated into the ordinance that will make those changes, will codify those changes at the next commission meeting.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
So this will go into effect this year?
Yes, sir.
And I think that the big changes here are just getting the P and Z back on 2-year terms with the commission, and then putting the mayor as chair, which I don't know, that's a big change, but that's what was intended years ago. We're just kind of correcting that. And then I'm really excited about having staff figure out some sort of criteria to help figure out, you know, here's a gap, right? We don't have this perspective. We don't have any plumbers. We don't have any teachers. We don't have an architect, right? That kind of a thing, and helping a ranking system. And then we can just go seat 1, 2, 3, right? So those seats aren't appointments that you'll have to make. They're just the seats that will be up with your term limit that will be up. Is that anything else we want to put into this resolution? Otherwise, it'll operate just the way it always has. Instead of us having to come up here and do rankings on the fly, staff will do some rankings based on what we're looking for, and then we can just vote right down the rankings that staff presents.
So do we not make any suggestions as far as? So do we not make any suggestions as far as applicants?
No, I will still advertise for the applicants. Every commissioner is still welcome to call up people and encourage them to apply. I think that if commissioners are seeing something that's missing on the P and Z, a perspective that's missing on the P and Z, then we can say that to staff. Hey, I've watched a couple of P and Z meetings. We've got 3 business owners, but we don't have anybody that is a blue collar, right? I don't know what, I'm just making stuff up here. But if you see that we're missing, we don't have a farmer on the P and Z, right? We don't have a businessman on the P and Z. I'm trying to think who the P and Z is right now. I think staff would, welcome that kind of feedback. But the direction that you guys gave to staff in this resolution, if it stands, is help us figure out how to make sure we have a diversity of perspectives on the P and Z, so we don't end up with 5 teachers.
I like teachers.
I mean, 4.
And so, Mr. Mayor, this is also, would be appropriate time to announce that based on these changes, assuming the commission directs to go forward, we will have 2 planning and zoning board seats and 3, 2 of the planning and zoning board seats are paired with the PZ, and we'll have 1 HARB seat coming up this April to be filled. And just coincidentally, the way it falls, it will not. This change will not unseat anybody who's already on the planning and zoning board or the HARB. It coincides with their existing renewal time anyway. So you don't have to worry about making this change. Isn't going to unseat anybody that's currently seated.
All right. Any last thoughts, suggestions, comments? No, I'll have a motion. Oh, wait, do we need a motion?
Second.
Yeah, I got a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Maison. This is a presentation, but the motion will be to go draft that resolution, bring it back to us. Any comments from the dais?
None.
Public comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Bring us that resolution, Brian. Make it
Thank you,
happen.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, public announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, the commission likes to hear from you frequently and often, so we set aside public announcements at the beginning of the meeting. These are 2-minute announcements. So if you got a garage sale you're trying to push, or a lost dog or something like that, now's the time. If you want a little bit more time, we have 5 minutes at the end of the night. This is the time to talk to us about things that aren't on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, there'll always be an opportunity for public comment at that point in time. Does anybody have anything they want to update? Anybody have exciting opioid task force acknowledgments? I don't want to put you on the spot. We'll keep it as a secret. April 22nd. Just keep the date. April 22nd. Keep the date on your, keep the date on your calendar.
Joy Glanzer, Chair of the Newberry Opioid Task Force. We're excited to talk about the April 22nd event. It's a drug take-back event sponsored by HPW Health Prevention and Wellness from Gainesville. But anyway, in addition to that, the fire department wants to partner with us. So we're going to have a barbecue fundraiser. We're going to have Touch the Truck for kids. They can come out and play, look on the trucks. We're going to have a demonstration for CPR and Narcan demonstration. One of the most exciting things is that half of the money raised in this event is going to go for the fire station to have the first in the county ever baby box. This is a box where, I can tell you more about it later, but anyway. And the other half will be donated to the Opioid Task Force to do the projects that we've got planned for the next short-term future. So please come April 22nd from 10 to 2 in the afternoon. Food will be starting to be served at 11 o'clock at the fire station. Thanks, yeah.
Same day as West Fest now, so just block out the whole day for West Fest. Come to the drug take back, clear out the medicine cabinets, get a barbecue dinner, right? Learn how to administer Narcan or do CPR. Maybe we'll get you to do the CPR training, Mr. Farnsworth. All right. And then, I like to play on the trucks too. So me and the kids will get around the trucks and have a good time, and we'll do some good work. Any other public announcements? Hearing none, we're going to go to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Second from Commissioner Mazon. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That will take us to the impact fee and ordinance. Dallas, take us through this conversation. Big moment for the city of Newberry. Lots to consider here.
Sorry, I've got a lot of.
We need a bigger podium for you.
Yeah, we
need
do.
A little side table. We'll work on that in the next budget
Adopt
cycle.
an impact fee for that. All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. The conversation we're about to have has been about 2 years in the making. Back in the budget process in 2021, the commission directed us to go start thinking about impact fees. We had multiple workshops, hired consultants to do professional studies for us. And tonight we are here to bring you the ordinance to actually implement impact fees. Our requested action tonight is for the commission to move to approve, deny, or postpone the ordinance 2023-14 upon its first reading. A little bit of background on where we are and how we got here. As I mentioned, a few years ago, the City Commission directed city staff to begin to investigate impact fees and bring back data. So this is actually our fourth public meeting we've had on impact fees. We had 3 public workshops devoted it to impact fees. And we provided a report from a third-party consultant who did the study for us. A little bit about what impact fees are and their purpose. Impact fees are highly beneficial in high-growth cities, such as the city of Newberry. We've seen a 60% increase in population since 2010, an average annual growth rate of at least 4%, and then some pretty significant annexations. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that the city of Newberry is growing. The City Commission narrowed the scope of the impact fee discussion to 2 main areas, public buildings and multimodal transportation. So the ordinance for you tonight covers both of those focus areas. Impact fees actually hit 9 of the City Commission's strategic goals that were adopted in your strategic vision last year. I won't go through every single one of those 9 goals that impact fees supports. But they do primarily support expanding our road connectivity, expanding our parks and rec opportunities, investing into our community, and increasing revenue for those investments. But I did think it was important to mention that the City Commission adopted a strategic goal last year, and we are meeting those strategic goals. So impact fee definition: impact fees are a one-time charge to new development. That's new construction within the city would pay the impact fee, or major renovation, major expansion of existing development, or existing residents do not pay an impact fee. It covers the cost of new capital facilities. It implements your capital improvement plan. It protects your existing taxpayers from bearing the burden of new development. So as new residents are moving into the city, causing us to have to expend more funds to enhance the capacity of our existing infrastructure, We don't have to spread those costs against all of our residents. Those residents who are moving here are paying for that burden. And generally, impact fees are rolled into the mortgage of a homeowner or a business owner. Once we get more into the impact fee discussion in terms of the fee, it'll be a little bit clearer, but when I did the math, assuming a standard rate and a 30-year fixed mortgage at 100% adoption, the impact fee would be about $35 a month, additional to a homeowner's mortgage. So why do cities look at impact fees? The biggest reason is to maintain your current level of service. As I mentioned, as new residents move into the city, they have a demand on our infrastructure, and to keep our infrastructure at the same level as when they moved here, those impact fees are collected to increase our capacity. They're really needed when you have a high growth and limited funding, which the city of Newberry is in. And then impact fees are often looked at because property taxes generally only fund ongoing maintenance of existing infrastructure, not typically your expansion of infrastructure. A lot of times we hear, well, my property taxes should pay for this to be developed or improved, and unfortunately, it's not how property taxes are really designed. So those impact fees will provide a level of funding for expansion or enhancement of our existing assets. So there are a couple different ways you can calculate impact fees. The most common is the consumption-based methodology, which is the methodology that the city used. What this methodology says is it's based off of how much an individual resident is going to use in those assets. So you take the cost of the assets, how many new residents you have, divide it out, give them a credit for what they're going to pay in taxes, and then that's how you come to your calculation. It's much more complicated than that, but that's kind of the general summary. It's important to note that impact fees cannot correct existing deficiencies. You cannot use impact fees to maintain existing assets. You can only use them to enhance or increase your capacity of those assets.
So pause there for a second there, Dallas. So I've got a road that's in disrepair. It's already in disrepair. We've got a new neighborhood coming on, wants to come onto that road. The impact fee can pay to widen the road, add sidewalks, but it can't pay for the asphalt that's there. Is that
Correct. You
how
could
do
not use the
understand that?
impact fees to get back to the original state of that road.
But if you're widening the road,
But if you're widening it, if you're
improving the
going
road.
from a dirt road to a paved road, you could use impact fees. If, for example, we could not use impact fees to replace our existing fire trucks, but you could use impact fees to buy another fire truck to increase our capacity.
okay.
Continue on, there's a lot of laws around impact fees. The most important for the commission is we have to base it on recent and localized data. So the impact fee study that's provided to you tonight is based off of Newberry information, not information from South Florida or some other area. Once the commission adopts impact fees, should you so choose, there's a 90-day cooling down period after that. So if the commission were to adopt impact fees at its next meeting, we wouldn't actually start collecting those impact fees until the end of July. And then the other big item is impact fees are required to be accounted for separately in separate funds. So there's full transparency of what those fees are being collected for and what they've been used on. And your auditors would audit us every year to ensure compliance to those impact fees.
Hang on one second before you move on to the next slide. So, on that rational nexus of the amount of collection and expenditures and thinking about Newberry costs, right? Because oftentimes you will hear people say, well, I'm not against growth, but I want to grow strategically, right? Perfectly, 100% agree with that. But I want to point out that this is exactly what that is, right? This has been a 2-year process. And the reason that it's been a 2-year process is because that our staff went back and forth with the company that we hired to do this work, which is entirely, immensely complicated work, because we were making sure that the numbers that they were using were Newberry numbers, because we have strategically gone back and looked at our numbers from a decade back, looking forward. And when you are strategic, it takes some time, right? So you started off by showing how this aligned with the visioning session. I think that's great. But that, again, is another aspect of how we have been strategically growing, working with our community, having workshops, having public meetings, getting all this information so that we could get to this point here. And I think it's because of that our community, I haven't had one phone call from a resident that doesn't want us to do this, right? Which is an amazing thing when you stop and think about that we're considering passing fees, right? But our residents are asking us, go do that. We want these things, that we want to see this vision come through. And we see this as an avenue for it. So I just wanted to pause for 1 second and just, say thank you to staff for doing that extra work. I know it took a little bit more time, but when you look at the counties around us that struggle with these kinds of things, I think it's because their staff didn't take the extra time, didn't go the extra mile to make sure that those numbers were legitimate and they could defend them to their residents. Go ahead, Dallas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, as I mentioned before, just your basic impact fee formula. So you take the cost of, to add capacity, subtract out any credits either from future revenue, and then divide it by the population to get your net fee. Again, it's much more complicated to get to all those numbers, but that's your basic formula. So that's the background. Moving into the technical study. So again, the City Commission directed staff to look into 2 areas, the first being public buildings. So our technical study, staff along with our consultant, looked at various components of the impact fee, what sort of buildings you currently have, how much square footage staff's currently occupying, and then extrapolate that out across your residents to determine how much square foot per resident the city has. The calculation came to 2.27 square feet of government buildings per resident. If you calculate that out across how much our buildings and land and vehicles are valued at, you get $825 per resident. If you give that a credit percentage and go through all the math, you come to a net impact per resident of $742. So every new resident who moves to Newberry is potentially costing $742 to the government for their impact. Extrapolate that out even further into your impact fee, and you come to these impact fees, which are the maximum amount the City Commission could adopt. These are the fees that the consultant and staff came to as the actual impact of a new resident. The City Commission is free to adopt a rate lower than this. These are the rates that the consultant determined was the impact to the government for new residents. So on average, for governmental buildings, public buildings, a 1,500 to 2,400 square foot house would pay a $1,314 impact fee for public buildings.
And now, are you looking for a motion for public buildings and then a separate motion for?
It's one big ordinance.
So it's one ordinance, so at the end, we can go through the presentation, then we can come back to these numbers?
Yes, sir.
And say we want 100%, we want 90%, and we'll hash that out then, okay?
Yes, sir. So comparing our impact fee rates to some other areas, particularly Alachua County, our impact fee does come in a little bit higher than what Alachua County is currently charging on the public building side. However, I think it's important to note that Alachua County doesn't actually have a public building impact fee. They have a fire impact fee, and they have a parks and recreation impact fee. So our impact fee is more broad, covers more aspects of government buildings. Alachua County also did their study in 2007. Our study is done in 2022. And when Alachua County adopted theirs in 2007, it was 85% of the fee. So their numbers are probably a little higher now if they were to redo their study and include the other portions of the public buildings impact fee that we included.
Mayor,
Commissioner Farnsworth.
where is the city of Eagle Lake?
On a lake?
Polk
County.
County? Why are their,
Sheriff and the next.
why are their impact fees so much higher than, I mean, this was done in 2006, and they only did a 50% portion. And yet-
Mr. Mayor, I don't know. I haven't looked at the impact fee study from Eagle Lake. My assumption would be that they have either a very high level of standards for their governmental buildings, or they have a lot of parks and governmental buildings and a smaller population, but I'm just guessing.
Did we select these cities because they're similar in size or growth rate to us, or are these just a random sampling so that you can just see what it is?
On the public buildings, it's kind of, there's not a lot of other organizations that do just like a broad public buildings. Most governments do fire or parks or or whatever. So for the public buildings, it was kind of finding cities that were closest to us that had a public building impact fee, with the exception of Alachua County. On the multimodal, when we get there, it's more of cities that are a little bit closer to Newberry. So in terms of revenue projection, this graph looks terrible on the screen, but if you
But the
project
font
out,
is so big. I mean, I can see every year there.
thank you,
Chris.
thank you. Next time I'll do an individual slide for each of the 16 years to get to the city manager's 20-pitch font. So we took, based upon the extrapolations of development that we've been using for our wastewater treatment plant capacity, we took anticipated development over the next 16 years and applied the 100% impact fee to that development to come up with this revenue projection over the next 16 years. As you can see, if development continues at the pace we think it will, based off what we've been doing for our wastewater treatment plant, on the public buildings revenue side, you'd be collecting a little bit over $200,000 a year, at least for the next 12-ish years, and then dipping down to 150. Again, that's just based off what we know today. As more developments come in to the city, those numbers would change. This is also the most conservative estimate I could run, because we don't know, in terms of commercial growth and those sorts of different industries that come in, what size they would be for me to project the revenue on those. But that's your public building revenue. Projects you can fund with public building infrastructure or impact fees are new general government buildings, fire stations, additions to existing buildings, land purchase for future buildings and additions, new fire trucks, new vehicles, new equipment, and equipment to outfit those new fire trucks. That's the public buildings. I'll stop and if anybody has any questions on public buildings before I move into multimodal.
Public buildings, you want to go through the multimodal?
I got you real quick.
Liaison.
So when you say addition to the existing buildings, is to add just square footage without extra water, toilet, like a toilet or a sink or anything, or is this just square footage?
You can build a whole new building that is fully operable.
What if you don't? Am I making sense? Like just square footage, just say I want to add on like 800 square feet, or 200 square foot, or 100 square foot to as an addition.
Are you talking,
With that,
What trips the threshold of minor addition to, doesn't pay impact fees? Does it trip the threshold? Usually over some percentage of the existing.
So if I'm adding a garage off to the back, that's not an impact fee.
yeah.
If it's 20%, if I add a garage slash, I don't know, something that's half again the size of the house, mother-in-law suite, that would be an impact fee.
But this is on the commercial stuff.
It could be either one. Like some people add on a whole nother house to their house, right?
So they would have to pay the impact fee.
Well, we're
Depending
figuring
upon-
out the percentage. I think Mike's right. I don't remember what the percentage is, but it's a percentage threshold of the existing. So if what you're adding on is underneath that percentage, it's not considered an impact. If I build on a mother-in-law suite because my parents are aging and they're moving here and they're bringing their vehicles and they're still gonna be driving for the next 10 years, well, that's creating an impact, right? So they would be.
it would be prorated based upon the square footage of the addition, is my understanding of the ordinance. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house and you added on 1,000 square feet, you'd pay half of the impact fee in that category.
And is there any ratio that I'm not impacted if I add on a garage? That's not creating an impact, that's just expanding my,
I figured if it was on the,
It's an addition,
probably.
so.
Yeah, but you're not adding, the whole thing about impacts, is you're bringing in more people.
right,
Accessory structure like a garage, porch,
right.
likely would be a no. And living space, heated and cooled living space.
For an accessory building or structure, an impact fee will only be applied should it be determined that that accessory dwelling creates an impact upon the city. So if you're adding a mother-in-law suite, you'd probably have to pay an impact fee because that's a new person, but if you're just building a garage, probably not.
But it'd be a percentage of whatever it is. It wouldn't necessarily be the whole thing. Right.
I don't know if I agree with that though, because, if they're not bringing in more, souls into the home, you're not adding bedrooms and stuff in that.
But that's what I just heard him say.
Example, so what you're doing is, it resets the clock on them on their property taxes, cause now that's at 100%. You know, you understand what I'm saying? So they're gonna get double hit there. Okay.
Hang on, let me make sure I'm understanding, because what I heard Dallas say, wouldn't disagree with what you just said. That if I'm adding on additional dwelling units, then this applies. And that's what you said, you don't want it to apply unless we're bringing additional souls in.
That's correct.
And what he just said, it wouldn't apply unless I'm bringing additional souls in. Right.
It discusses whether or not the building would have an additional impact.
See, I think the loophole there actually goes the other way. I think that the loophole is I build a garage, and then once I finish paying my building permit fees and everybody goes, then I enclose the garage and then I bring mom in. I think that's how they do it.
That's how they do it.
Right. So, I mean, I think this will, and again, guys, when I'm thinking about, and I think this is just important for the public to know, when I think about this conversation, I am thinking about Newberry 50, 100 years from now, right? So will there be loopholes here and there? Yeah, but will we capture 99% of the growth that's gonna happen in the next 100 years? Absolutely. And that's kind of where I think we need our focus to be on. So I think there is some leeway here.
Upon further reading, 55-page ordinance, there is an exemption for the alteration or expansion of an existing dwelling unit which does not result in the additional dwelling units or increase the number of families for which such dwelling unit is arranged, designed, or intended to accommodate.
Then I agree with it. I'm okay with it.
So if I put a tiny home in my backyard,
Do we issue building permits for tiny homes?
It won't fit in your backyard.
600 square foot, please.
It'd fit in his front yard.
It would.
It'd be in the below 1,500 square foot
So it
category.
wouldn't have an impact fee on it.
No,
It would.
Yeah.
it'd be in the lowest tier because it's tiny, but it'd still have an impact fee because it's increasing the number of families that live in the dwelling.
Your taxes would go up,
Right.
unless you put it back there and didn't tell anybody.
He doesn't do that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, can't do that.
Yeah.
Other questions I ask? How many people have added on to their existing homes in Newberry that would require them to pay an impact fee over the last year?
Take a
For the
guess at
planning
that,
director.
Mike. Right.
Mr. Mayor, I don't even have to consult with staff
Yeah.
to say that we'd have to analyze that and email you the results before the next public hearing. But did not anticipate that question and are not prepared to
I didn't
respond
either.
to it.
Now, can
It's
you
a
go
great
back to
question.
And
the comparison
again,
of
Mr. Mayor,
cities?
if you just expanded, did a expansion to your residence and didn't increase the number of people living there, it's exempted from this impact fee.
Who makes that decision?
I know.
It says the city manager or his designee.
So you.
No.
I think it'll be the building inspector, right? Whoever goes out and says, hey, you're setting this up for a family to potentially live here. And again, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of the same thing. Like, we have people who have, in agriculture, they live on 5 acres, right? You are allowed to separate that one time on the pretense that it's a family member moving in, right? But again, the idea here is about the impact, right? So whether I'm adding on a room for family to move, I'm building a tiny house in the back for family to move. If you're bringing cars, bikes, because this is multimodal, right? Well, it's just building side, but if I'm gonna be impacting the transportation of the city, impacting the infrastructure of the city, this should apply. So I 100% foresee sometime over the next 50 years having being in a conundrum, right? Someone's gonna say, should this apply, should it not apply? And we're just gonna have to use the professionalism of our staff to help us make that decision.
Well, when you're being taxed with the county, the Department of Revenue, it's at, you're adding on square footage to your home, it starts at 50% of where the base rates add on it. But if you add a bathroom, there's where it goes up to 100%.
But
So-
to your, go ahead.
No.
No, because your previous comment worried me. But right now, if I add on to my house, the county tax office gets that and reassesses me at that point anyway.
Right.
So the impact fee doesn't really affect, if I'm gonna add on to my house, I get reassessed and retaxed, right?
Right.
So the impact fee is just about whether or not that renovation is bringing more souls into our community, more impact on the infrastructure.
Right.
The taxes, that was gonna happen to you, and I should know that going into adding on, renovating, expanding my house, that this is gonna bring the property appraiser back into my life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Does this also apply to like mobile homes?
Yes.
Bound by square footage, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Any other questions on, and Dallas, take us back to the slide that gives us the max amount, because I'm assuming you have a slide at the end that says, public buildings, this is a max amount, but just in case you don't have that slide, I
Do
wanna
not
write
have
it
the slide
down.
that does that.
So max amount for, and somebody
That's why I
stole,
stuck mine over here.
they stole all my
Yeah,
pens.
me too.
That was last
You did too? Yeah.
Yeah. So max amount for public buildings is all those numbers.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch more, honestly. Whole page of them.
All right, so we're gonna say between 1,000 and 1,900 if I'm retail, right? Okay, all right, let's move on to multimodal.
All right, moving into multimodal. Again, went through the same sort of exercise, used a lot of different reference points to calculate our data points. This is a graph to show you that construction prices are increasing. I don't really know why you need a graph to tell you that, but there they are. Currently, our city funding is mostly being used only for resurfacing and maintenance project. We primarily use gas tax revenue. As the city commission is aware, the state indexed their gas tax, so it increases every year. They did not index the local gas tax, so our gas tax decreases in value every year. Here is a chart that shows that, as while fuel efficiency and inflation increase, the value of our penny fuel tax decreases and has decreased 53% since 1994. Just to speak to kind of the need of impact fees. These are the calculated impact fees, again at 100%. For transportation, it's $5,600 for a single family resident. And then again, changes based off of your non-residential usage. Again, there are 3 pages of different classifications of impact fee for both transportation and public buildings. We just picked the biggest ones, the ones that are most common for the slideshow here. The rest of them are in your packet in the ordinance. Here's a comparison. It says we assessed 85%. That's wrong because I put that number in the wrong spot. So our impact fee.
Fill off the rest of the numbers, or is that just a single column mistake?
It's just that 85% is wrong. So our impact fee, 100% would be $5,600. Alachua County's is $5,300. Again, theirs is from 2007 and was adopted at 85%. And then you have a variety of other cities of various sizes that have similar impact fees and what theirs come in at. And then again, continuing on, another comparison, Alachua County actually splits theirs into two categories, rural and urban. We would fall into the rural category, which is a little bit higher. But again, their study is nearly 16 years old, and they adopted 85%.
Dallas, when you adopt impact fees for most of our other fees, we end up instituting an index increase so that you just kind of move up. Can you do index increase on impact fees, or does every single time you go up, you have to, I know you can do 12% without reinstituting the study, but can you just say,
You cannot tie it to an index. You could adopt an ordinance that says for the next 4 years, we're going to increase 3% a year. But you can't say forever and ever the transportation impact fee will be increased by the cost of living. You'd have to say, when you adopt your ordinance, we want next year for it to increase 3%, the year after for it to increase 3%. Explicitly state that in your ordinance.
okay.
You're showing this at 85%, right?
That's a Scrivener's error. Those numbers in Newberry is 100%.
Oh, they are, okay, because I was like, wow.
So those numbers that you're showing for other counties and cities and the studies that they've adopted, they've been collecting that since this year that you've put, and they haven't increased it since then? So they adopted it in 2007 at whatever rate that is, and they've just sort of left it there. They haven't gone back to it. That's how I'm understanding this.
That is my understanding, yes, sir. In terms of revenue projection, again, based off of our current development rates and the number of development permits we've been looking at in projecting our wastewater treatment plant expansion. On your transportation impact fee, you'd be collecting a little less than $1 million a year, a little over $1 million a year some years, and then in 2037 and dipping down. Again, those are just projections based off what we currently have on the books. That's my presentation on multimodal. Answer any questions at this time about multimodal?
Anybody any questions about multimodal, roads, sidewalks,
Right.
bike lanes, walk paths?
I have a question.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Previously, you mentioned, it could go towards like expanding a fire department or building a new fire station. Could it be used to finance the police department as far as the building is concerned, or buying the equipment such as cars and other equipment?
Mr. Mayor, the answer is maybe. It's not common for impact fees to be used to expand services that we don't currently offer that are considered in the impact fee. The impact fee does not consider any sort of law enforcement use because we don't currently offer law enforcement directly by the city. So the attorneys, the impact fee attorneys we've talked to and our impact fee experts are iffy on whether or not we could use our public buildings for police because we don't currently offer it. If the city commission were to adopt a police department and then adopt an impact fee after that, you could use it. But there is some concern about using impact fees to expand capacity of something you don't currently have.
But there is another type of impact fee that is specific to first responders.
There's a public safety impact fee
And that one you could.
if we already offered law
Right.
enforcement.
So the maybe comes in because we do pay ASO $1 million. So you could make the argument that there is already a service there. We're shifting some of that somewhere else.
The impact fee is based off of the buildings and assets we own. We own no law enforcement assets.
So the answer is no, not maybe.
The attorneys have said maybe, but they don't recommend it.
Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. But if I take this process as an example, if this body said to staff, within the next 3 to 5 years, we want our own law enforcement agency, then we would also say, within that time frame, we want a public safety impact fee, right? And time that up to where it goes into effect relatively at the same time that the police department comes into effect.
Soft yes.
Madam Attorney, you got any thoughts on that? I mean, there could be like a year overlap.
Yeah, I think
right?
you would need to have the asset existing before you.
Dallas summed it up very well in that the impact fee is based on the assets that you own. So it's increasing something that you already have. Think of it like you have a balloon. There's a little bit of air in the balloon. You can use the impact fee money to increase the size of the balloon, but you can't use the impact fee to purchase a balloon and then blow it up.
So if we were to open up a substation in Newberry 6 months from now we have a balloon. We just need to blow some air into it.
Yes, you would need to, again, run a study based on another impact fee study. But yes,
Right.
you would
It's
need
a
to
separate
own
impact
something to increase.
Right. Okay.
Another study, more money.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just remind the commission that the lead alternative for how do you start a police department is not a brand new brick and mortar building. 10,000 square foot is the expectation that we would probably start in some sort of a.
No.
Well,
Go ahead, finish that off.
it's an alternative, actually, financially, it's a very good alternative, to start in, something that's not a permanent facility. And I think if the commission elects to go that route, that gives the commission the time to do the impact fee study and begin to collect the revenues for whenever they move it into the final phase or brick and mortar type building.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about multimodal? What was the fourth one that we didn't go over? Was like parks and stuff like that? So
Yeah, so we could have done a public safety impact fee and a parks impact fee and a public buildings. And the city commission chose to just do public buildings because it touches on parks and public safety a little bit and gives you the most bang for your buck, so to speak.
We got public spaces and all for recreation anyhow, so I don't know that we need to add more money to that.
No.
We have other things we need to be working on.
But I think as that conversation progresses, we need to have in mind the public safety as a potential way to help offset that. And everything else that we've talked about today is just the jigsaw puzzle of, what comes first. But it would certainly be something that you would need to look at some point in time of how to go about doing that. Right?
Right.
All right, take us.
All right,
Next
so your
steps.
next steps, so we've gotten city commission input, we've provided the technical report, so we're in implementation now. So the implementation process is fairly easy. There's an ordinance adoption. Tonight is first reading of that ordinance. Should the city commission adopt it upon second reading, we will advertise in the newspaper that we are going to implement impact fees. 90 days after that notice, we will begin collecting impact fees, which is no later than August 1st.
Hang on one second. So 90 days, August 1st. Let's say I'm a developer right now, right? I've bought the land, I've developed the land, I'm in the process of selling the land. I've based what I'm selling those lots on a price that didn't conceive of impact fees. How do we treat those folks fair? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but
Mr.
what's
Mayor,
the solution?
Our impact fee attorneys have advised us that if you're that far along the development process, that we would not charge those impact fees to you.
What's the line though? How do you?
Good answer.
I mean, I like the answer too, but what is the line there? Is it construction?
Construction drawings?
Is it plats? What is it?
It could be platted, it could be construction plan approval. I think that probably in fairness, the right number is construction plan approval for residential development.
So if you've already been through construction plan approval,
If you've received construction plan approval on the effective date of, the ordinance.
you're grandfathered
You're
in.
grandfathered in.
If you haven't gotten construction plan approval by August 1st, impact fees apply.
Well, and it could be August 1st
Or next meeting.
or next
Okay.
meeting. If you've gotten construction plan approval by when the commission approves it, then you would be exempt. And we would specify that by subdivision name and by phase. So that,
Okay.
that it would be, the one I'm thinking of is Avalon Woods. Avalon Woods will have construction plan approval for phase 1A, 1B, 2, and 3. By the time this is considered for second reading, we would write that into the ordinance. And I'm sure there's a couple phases of Countryway, Town Center that would be in the same position.
Okay. Commission,
I agree.
good with that? Again, I'm thinking 50, 100 years out, right? So I'm not so much worried about
Right.
this moment. I'm thinking, Newberry 100 years from now.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a good point. As we've mentioned before, if the city commission were to look at your impact fees you have in your water wastewater system, which we refer to as development fees, a lot of the infrastructure improvements this commission's been able to fund, we would have not had a funding source for. So whoever was on the board, probably Monty, when those when those development fees were implemented, had great foresight and provided the commission and staff a great funding mechanism.
Now, does that caveat, that grandfather need to be part of the motion, or is that already written in to, did staff already foresee this problem, or is this a new?
Staff is aware, but it's not written into the ordinance that's in
So we
front
will
of
make
you.
that part of the
You could
motion.
say, please include that when it comes back for second reading, I think would be the best way to handle it. I think
And staff suggestion is construction.
Construction plan approval.
Okay.
Well, and as the manager said, we'll have a list. These developments are exempt.
Okay.
So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any other questions. The requested action tonight is for the commission to move to approve, deny, or postpone ordinance 2023-14 upon first reading.
Okay, so, as Commissioner Mazon said in the BOA meeting, we are down Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Clark has authorized me to, one, apologize for his absence, but two, say that he is publicly in favor of passing this motion. He is most comfortable coming in to begin with at a 75 to 80% range to start off, right? I think personally that is perfectly acceptable. I think that anything where we can go up 12% a year. So in an emergency, even if you guys came in at 75%, basically 2 years out, we could be back up to the 100% mark, right? And that usually in this world, emergencies are kind of those, we have time to deal with them. So I'm anything less than 75, and I think we're leaving too much on the table. So, I mean, ultimately, I think the community truly values when we work together as a team, and when we show a supermajority. We don't know where Commissioner Martin is on this, but a supermajority are unanimous. That really helps our community feel like we're all on the same page. So, I think the first most important comment is Commissioner Clark has already said, hey, I can't be there, but let the public know that this is something we need to do. So I think we can say right now, not saying Commissioner Martin is opposed, he just hasn't shared his final stance with us. But that is, I want to add that to the conversation. Whatever percentage you guys want to go today, knowing where he's at, it is first reading. So we have another reading. You guys could go 100 today, and then he can make the argument to step in a little slower out of a collegiate atmosphere. You could say, well, I don't want to hit him all the way down to 75, but I'll go in at 80. You could still argue for 100% at second reading, or argue for 75. So with that groundwork laid, I think it's actually, and just final comment, I think it's better when we work in percentages, not flat numbers. Right. So we know the 100% of what we can go to, it's a lot, but for public buildings, it expands between 1,000 and 1.9. For multimodal, it spans between 5.6 and 7.8. So would you guys like to hear from the public on this before you deliberate, or you want to deliberate? You got any questions?
I don't hear from the public.
Open up public comment on impact fees. Don't all rush the podium at once.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, David McDaniel with M3 Development. Honestly, impact fees, I remember when they first showed up on the scene in the market that I was in Orange and Seminole counties, whatever that was, probably
you don't have to age yourself.
30 years, yeah, probably about 30 years ago, 35 years ago. What I've watched it do on behalf of a community is it kept a lot of arguments about transportation issues that needed to be addressed or sewer issues. I remember when I was a kid, my dad had a piece of land. He couldn't get it developed because Orange County didn't have sufficient sewer capacity. They created impact fees. I never heard another problem about sewer problems. My expectation, my hope is that we will end up in a situation where the city of Newberry won't be holding us back from development for any reason other than it is the will of the community. We won't have false narratives about, oh, the traffic, or oh, the this or that. So that's my hope. And I am grateful. After I had a chance to put a lot of thought into this, I had the realization that I had two major builders who have a business plan that's built around certain cost expectations. Putting impact fees on top of that would not only have them lose their enthusiasm for me, but they might lose some enthusiasm for what's happening here in Newberry. And I think we're all pleased with what they've been doing here. So I'm grateful that we have an exemption for the developments that are underway right now. And I will, if it passes, we'll notify them and let them know what's going on for the future. But I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Well, before you walk away from the podium, because I think it's a unique situation to have a developer speak highly of impact fees, and I appreciate you saying that. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but just best guess in terms of the enthusiasm of future projects. Do impact fees in your world dampen that enthusiasm? Do they temper it? Do they shut off the valve? Or do they actually increase the enthusiasm because they see the city as a partner on those infrastructure projects?
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions there. I would say will it stop development? The answer is probably not. The only thing that really impacts land development is when you make a radical change midstream, and all of a sudden, like I said, we got a business plan. I've got contracts with these builders that are a year and a half, 2 years old, 3 years old. They had an expectation of certain things that were built on their cost plans. And it can create a headwind, I think, especially in a market like we're in right now, where change is, no one likes change. Builders and businessmen hate change more because construction costs are going up. Now they're beginning to trail off, but they're raising interest rates, which is causing affordability impact on the buyers. So if we were to all of a sudden throw another fee on top of that, I think it would be a big negative. But I'm never a fan of adding costs to the end user, but when it comes down to things that are necessary for the community, I know this as a developer. You can't go and fix every road that there's a problem on when you got to do development, and the city needs to have a fund to be able to do those kinds of improvements, or some means by which it can be done and not bury a specific project. So the answer is I haven't seen it. I mean, I see impact fees as sort of baked into the cake statewide. Everybody's got some. I have seen when school boards, for example, they were the ones that were the big offenders back in the new millennium. There were counties that were raising their impact fees to $20,000 per home for school impact fees. I mean, that was ludicrous. It did have an impact. Demand declined. People started moving to other counties. I mean, it was bad. So my hope and my plea, if you will, is that number one, we use the money well, that it is used with precision and it's fixing real problems, not non-problems, and that ultimately that it's managed well. Now, obviously, I have great confidence in this commission and the mayor and the staff, but obviously the future is where it's all about, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to have the kind of quality that we have today, so.
Well, we appreciate that. We're gonna try to set the table for the next generation, so
That was good.
thank you so
I
much.
know you're educating.
Other public comment? And if I ask you a question, it doesn't count towards that time.
Oh, thank you.
That's on me.
Thank you so much. Joy Glanzer, and don't faint, I'm a real estate broker, and I'm in favor of these impact fees. Not just in favor, but extremely adamantly and heartily in favor of them. And the reason is, we need streams of income. And there's only so many ways that the government allows you to have, to raise money, and impact fees are one of them. And in my opinion, it's the fairest way you can raise money, because it only is paid for by the new people coming in. Zero residents that are living here now pay anything, and the problem is they're the ones paying for infrastructure, improvements now because of all the new growth and development. By having these impact fees, they will no longer be the ones paying for it. It's a fair way to raise money to pay for the impact that the new growth is happening. Dallas very well covered most of the points I was going to make, but one of them was, I think Newberry is one of the only, except for Archer, we're the only municipality in the county that doesn't have impact fees. Archer only has 1,100 people, so perhaps, they don't have the need we do. But it just is something that I don't think we can do without, and I'm so glad you've come to this point, and hopefully they're reasonable, and, they won't scare people off like they did where David came from. But if they're reasonable, it'll have a great impact on how our community looks. Well, and one more thing, I think developers like David and others, their communities are gonna be better off because they have better cities to come to. We'll be able to fix the roads and have all the goodies that we want. The other thing is, I think the second impact fee is gonna be for public facilities. This building was built 32 years ago, and I think we had 20 employees. There was hardly, a fraction of what we have now. And in order to serve this new growth and the new population we have, we need a facility that can house our employees all in one place and be more efficient. So thank you for your time, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Other public comment? Come on down, sir.
Paul Hornby, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. So as the process moves forward, who will generate the lists of projects that the impact fees will go towards? And then who in turn will prioritize those? And is there a role here, maybe it's too early to tell, but is there a role for the public to be part of that process?
Answer to those questions is all yes. So we don't do anything at this dais that doesn't involve public comment and opportunities for public support. Now, some of the projects that the commission is contemplating have already gone out to the public, so it really depends on when the public engages. So oftentimes I think of what happens in here as like an epic movie, and a lot of people, so it's a 3-hour movie, and a lot of folks come in at 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then they say, well, this movie sucks. Right? I don't understand what's going on. Who's the director here? Who did this? And we often try to find ourselves in a situation of having to recap the whole movie for people, and then those people disappear, and then they go away. And then another new person comes in, and they're like, well, this movie sucks again, right? So we have gone through visioning processes, we've gone through workshops, we've gone through surveys, so we have a lot of projects that have been generated by the community. But as we go forward, we will continue that process. And so we always invite people to be part of the process, hopefully from the beginning of the movie all the way through. But the answer to that question is the public decides by, one, electing these people, and then communicating with these people, and then through workshops, public meetings. We're about to go into budget cycle, and we have, probably about 5 more workshops that staff wants to have at any given time, right? Mike?
Absolutely. You threw me when you said workshops that staff wants to have. No, I'm kidding. Mr. Mayor, the project list that we'll be contemplating, that the commission will be contemplating, are the exact same projects we discuss every year during budget season, specifically in our capital improvement plan. So we'll start those conversations publicly in June, and we'll conclude them publicly in September with the adoption of the budget. But we have 4 or 5 public hearings every summer where we're discussing, you know, the upcoming budget, and that includes what's the projects that are identified in our capital improvement plan.
One last comment. So right now, you've got two elements that you're gonna be working towards. Do you have the flexibility moving forward to add another element like Parks and Recreation or, you know, things of that?
We do, and that was kind of the gist of the conversation about law enforcement, is, you know, not that we are contemplating actively at this moment having our own law enforcement agency, but we are looking forward and saying at some point in time, we will have to have that. Let's be strategic. Let's think 5 years out. So let's just hypothetically say that this board said to staff, in 5 years, we want a Newberry Police Department. Well, what I heard out of the conversation was that you could, if the Newberry Police Department opened up in 5 years, you could probably have a public safety impact fee in year 6, because you have to establish it first. But this has been a 2-year project, right? So to get to this moment, so that would mean that in year 4, you would start looking at a public safety impact fee, and you would start that study knowing that you were gonna be a year into it by the time it actually came on. So that's how we do things here at Newberry. We try to look 5-10 years out, and then we try to time it with a calendar so that when we have the need, we also have a solution coming hard on the heels if possible.
Very good. Thank you.
No, thank you. Other public comment? Hearing none, comes back to you guys. 100%, 90%, 80%?
Got a question.
Question.
So if we approve at 80% or even 100%, when can we do how many years do we have to wait to do another study to see if we can increase those impact fees?
Mr. Mayor, I only have 46 seconds to answer. Mr. Mayor, you can do the study at any time. However, you can increase up to 12.5% without doing the study. It would be my recommendation that if you anticipate raising the impact fees, you go ahead and set that up in the current ordinance and say, I'm going to increase impact fees 3% for the next 4 years. But you can go up to 12.5% every year.
Up to 100%, but when can you go and say, well, you know, I think our impact fees are too low, we need to do another study? There's no.
Are you saying
if you're willing to pay
12% a year after that first year, and there's no end to that? Or is it 12% a year up until the 100% that the study said? I think that's the question.
Yeah.
Can you rephrase the question, Mr. Mayor?
So the impact fee says you can go to 1,000, right? That's 100%. If the commission goes to 800, right, can they go 12% a year up to 1,000? And then at the 1,000, they're locked in at 1,000? Or can they go 12% a year past the original 1,000?
You can go past the original 1,000. You then get into the state statute that limits the increases. And I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. Maybe Kirsten does, but you can only go so many percent that's divided among so many years.
So it's 12% to the 100, and then it's some formula that we would need to, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I also don't have it memorized. What I will tell you is that
Going in your evaluation too, right? There you go.
it's pretty complicated. It's like, if you do this, then it's this, and if
Yeah.
you don't do that, it's this.
Yeah.
there are a lot of subsections. What I will say is that typically, once you get to that 12.5% over what you've started at, it's best practice to do another study, regardless of where you are.
So it's 12% is the most you can go till you hit the 100%. And then after the 100%, it's a much lesser percentage that's very complicated to figure out.
Yeah, if I remember the law off the top of my head, you would, so it was $1,000 and the commission wanted to go to 1,300. You would adopt the 1,300 and then every year for 4 years, it would step into that. You wouldn't change it every year for 4 years. But the law is weird and confusing.
Okay, but I think it's a really good question, because if you go in at 75 now, takes you roughly 2 years to get to 100, and then you're tapped out, right? That's the most you can go. If whatever the city's needs exceed that, Now you're looking at other revenues, right? You're looking at property taxes, you're looking at other permits and fees, right? Because this study per impact fee was $15,000, somewhere in there, 20,000 per study, 25, 30?
Per study.
We're just gonna stop there,
Let's
30,000
stop there, yeah.
per study,
It was,
right?
the grand total, I believe, was about 65,000 for the total.
For the two.
Now, obviously, the first year you do it is a much higher cost effort because they have to gather all the information.
So to relook at these two, we'd be looking at 20 to 30,000 for both of them. Because
Easily,
now you've
yeah.
got a baseline, you're just having to update it. But for the public safety, right, that would be an additional first time off, right? So that you're looking at another $30,000 for that.
And part of the reason the commission decided not to do the public safety is even more expensive because it's more complicated. It's one of the more complicated impact fees you can adopt.
Okay. Can you go back to the slide that talked about the revenues
For multimodal or
for
for?
multimodal? And I'm just using these as examples, right? All right.
I already know where I'm gonna be at.
Okay, so use this as an example. Right now, we have 15th Avenue that we want to expand, widen, add turn lanes, right? We have 30th that is a paved road that we want to improve. Both of those projects in total, I would ballpark between 5 and 6 million. So at 80%, and I know that this is kind of unfair because we're trying to see if this would pay for specific projects, which is kind of doing it backwards, right? But I guess my question is, at 75 or 80%, are we going to generate enough revenue off of the impact fee to pay the loan to do those projects? And just in this hypothetical world that those would be the two projects that we're trying to pay for.
Can you give me the grand total again, Mr. Mayor? Sorry,
I
doing
said
math.
6 million. I think I ballparked those two at 6 million. The city manager's not shaking his head at me like that's grossly undercutting. So I'm thinking 4 for 30th, 2 million for 15th.
So, Mr. Mayor, at our best guess at current interest rates, for every $100,000 you have for debt service in a year, you can get about $1.6 million. So if you're looking at a $4 million project,
6 million.
$6 million project, you would need about $600,000, $500,000 annually from that debt service payment. And on our current projections, you're looking at bringing in close to $1 million a year. So I would say you'd have sufficient funding for those projects.
And we don't want to bond the whole thing. I get, we need a little wiggle room here. But that means, what I'm hearing is at 75%, we would generate enough money to be able to do the larger road projects that we've heard from our community that they're looking for, and do things like put the turn lane in at Fourth that we just heard from that neighborhood that they want, and I'm sure a plethora of other things that Jamie could rattle off the top of his head. Does that kind of make sense? Because I know this is sort of a spitball way of going about it, but what I don't want to get into, I think we need to have a conversation about the impact fees as a separate conversation. That's fair. But I also want to put it in relation to some of the projects that you guys have already directed staff to finish, right? So if 75% wasn't going to get us those projects, well, then we need to be thinking about 85 or 90%. But if 75% will get us there and we can be at 100 in 2 years, then I think whatever you guys want to do is perfectly fine. I can see both arguments. So anybody want to reach for the mic?
Yeah.
Commissioner Mason.
So that's being at 100, doing 12% a year, right? So are we able to do smaller percentages?
After you get to 100, the percentage gets wacky. So if you guys go 100%, then it sounds to me like we'll just be at that number until you guys want to pay for another study.
Well, Mark Clark said 80, right? I'm comfortable with 85. I'm not sure with these guys.
I prefer 100.
I mean, I prefer 100, but then we'd have to
So I got 100, I got 85, I got 75, 80. You gonna throw out a number? Let's just see if we can average them out here. Where are you at, Commissioner Coleman? You at 100? You at 75? You're at 80. All right, so I got two 80s, 185 and 100. Do I hear 85? Can I have 85? Do I hear 85?
How about,
You do the gavel.
Yeah.
can we do like 80 and then, in the ordinance, put in, 10% increase over the next 2 years?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the staff would recommend that if it's the intent of the commission to raise it, that you adopt an ordinance that has those raises, those increases already in the ordinance, so
my
it
only
automatically
question-
happens.
The only question about doing that is, I mean, at 10%, I think it's pretty fine, but if you said, let's adopt an ordinance that did 3% a year, what if we had, you know, a massive sinkhole open up under roads and we needed to widen it and improve it and all those kind of things, and would we have to go back and take away the ordinance that said it was gonna be a 3% that year and replace it with a 12%?
You would just adopt a new ordinance.
That's a
that-
one-time reading? That's still a two-time
It'd still
reading?
be two. It'd be like in the budget this year, the city commission amended our water wastewater development fees by an ordinance adoption.
I mean, I like this plan. Come in at 80 and put it in at a 10% increase over the next 2 years. That gives us we come in a little lower, we have a step in. What do you think? 80% now, 10%
I'm cool with
increase
that.
a year?
Yeah.
You're good with that a year, that percent?
And I'd like to know how much of an increase we're able to do without an impact study after the, 100%.
Now, once you get to 100,
Then
we
you
have
gotta
two
do
people that don't
Let's get
have the
in.
formula memorized, but have both said it's immensely complicated.
We will do research and we'll have that answer for you the next reading.
Okay.
I mean, I would assume that you're in somewhere sub 5, that you could go without raising eyebrows. Like you could increase it 1 or 2%, and everybody, that's like an index increase at that point.
Let's put it like this. If the city is going to find themselves in litigation over anything, it's gonna be over improper impact fees. So that is why we always, always, always recommend that you play it safer than the statute, because you're even in the gray area, you run the risk of litigation, which is something that we don't want to do. We'd prefer to have a plan now, put it into the ordinance, be sure that we are meeting all of the statutory requirements, rather than in 2 or 3 years say, oh, well, if we go a little bit over this, we're allowed to, based on the statute, but, we're sort of getting into a gray area.
We do have some impact fee, a number of impact fee experts that we've contacted. NGN, Neighbors, Giblin, Nickerson is a local government law firm who drafted this ordinance, specializes in impact fees. So we'll definitely reach out to them, as well as our consultant who prepared the study, because again, they specialize in it. They'll be able to have those answers for us.
I think we all just need to let it process that. Once you get to 100, that's your number. Mr. New?
Mr. Mayor, I completely agree with the city attorney that this is an area to get into litigation, but I give assurances that we won't lead the commission into gray areas, that state law, if it addresses how you move beyond 100% of your study with percentages, and what needs to go behind that, the commission will be fully abreast of that. We will report that to you for second reading. We're gonna know that pretty well when we come back in second reading. We will definitely provide a slide up there so the city commission can see it and follow along for when we get to that point in the future.
But, as the city grows in 5 years, you could just do another impact study and start all over.
And it'll be cheaper the second time around.
Maybe not in 5 years.
Yeah. The new one, the public safety one, won't be,
Yeah.
but hopefully these two would be.
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
All right?
I move to set the impact fees at 80% with a 10% increase over the next 2 years, with exemption of construction plan that's already been approved.
Okay, I have a motion with an amendment. Do I hear a second? I have a second from, motion was made by Commissioner Farnsworth, second was made by Commissioner Coleman. Second set has 80% entry year, 10% increase per year after that with construction plan. Any development with construction plan approval is grandfathered in, right? That's the motion, that's everything. We didn't forget an amendment. Okay, Questions or comments from the dais? Public questions or comments? Come on now, you might want to move your laptop.
Can't trust Joy.
Nope. Joy Glanzer. I'm very uncomfortable because staff went to all this trouble and time and money to do this study and come up with this figure. And then I hear, oh, how about 85? How about 75? You don't have any basis for saying 75, 85, or 90. I'm respectfully saying that if they say it's 100% that we need, where is the science from the dais saying that? I mean, I sell houses, and somebody hires me to go sell a house, and I do all my research and my study, and I say, okay, it's worth $200,000. And then I show up at their house, and they say, well, I've decided I'm gonna sell it for 300, okay? You know, and they have no basis for that, and it's not gonna sell at that, and then, so I hope you can, listen to staff and take seriously their recommendation, because it's okay to raise it, that much over 2 years and get to 100%, but in the meantime, you're losing a lot of money that could be used for that infrastructure that we really need for this growth. Thanks.
Ms. Joy, but the thing of it is like the city of Lakeland, they're between 30 and 75%. Inverness is at 50%.
Of what they're recommending?
There's another one, there's Plant City, they're at 100. Loxville County's at 85%. Is there any more of these here in the study? The city of Eagle Lake is at 50%.
I think.
Can I ask, and they're not getting what they want, right? I mean, 50% of what they were recommended, is that what you're?
I'm just saying, these cities aren't getting the full vote of 100%. They got it, they've stepped down too.
But I mean, are they able to pay for the infrastructure that they want? No, probably not. They get 50% of what they want, maybe. That's what I don't know their budget.
I mean, I think that,
Is it arbitrary number, maybe?
Let me separate here, because we're getting into more of a conversation. And I will absolutely take the criticism that we did that with a little bit of levity.
That's okay.
I think there's a couple of things that were wrong with what I would disagree with. One, staff isn't recommending that we go 100%.
Okay.
The study says this is what you can charge.
Go up to.
There's no recommendation.
I didn't understand that.
When we are talking about what do we want to step into, in my view, that's this commission saying, we like to move cautiously into new things. So this is going to be a cost on to residents. We still want to be a pro-growth. We want to be a friendly city. We want to, so this gives us a chance to put not a toe in, because I would say 80% is almost the whole foot. And it gets us to 100 within a 2-year period of time. So it's like when the city did the fire assessment fee all those years ago, and the fire assessment fee said you could charge $350. And this was 20 years ago, and the commission said, well, we're gonna start at 25, right? And that was the same principle. I just disagree. I think once you paid all that money, then you need to commit, right? And it took, you saw our dilapidated fire department, and it's taken this commission the last 5 years of pouring a lot of money to bring our fire department back up. If we had gone in at $300 instead of $350, you're still giving a little bit back to the residents. You're saying this is the fair share, but now you're actually generating enough money. So that was the conversation that I was not very articulate at those projects.
Clear, I understand.
Can we still do those?
I gotcha.
We can do those projects at the 75% level, and with room to spare. At the 80% level, that gives us a little more room to spare.
Thank you for
Does that help?
explaining that. That does
Okay.
completely explain. And thank you, Commissioner Coleman.
Other public comment on the motion going at 80%?
Before we take a vote, I don't recall whether or not we read the ordinance in its entirety. I don't believe we did.
We skipped over that part. Well, that's because it's this entire page.
It's
And
very
so,
long.
Madam Attorney, when you read the ordinance into the record, now that you have the percentages, yeah, read fast.
The title in its entirety, yes. This is ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance of the Commission of City Commissioners of the City of Newberry, Florida, regarding impact fees, creating a new Chapter 87 of the City of Newberry Code of Ordinances entitled Impact Fees, providing general definitions, providing rules of construction and general legislative findings, providing administrative administrative provisions related to the imposition, collection, and use of impact fees, providing for exemptions, alternative impact fees, and developer contribution credits, providing for impact fee review hearings and notice requirements governing the adoption of impact fees or increase of impact fee rates, providing for the review of impact fees and for administrative costs, providing definitions and legislative findings related to transportation impact fees, providing for the imposition, collection, and use of transportation impact fees, providing definitions and legislative findings related to public building impact fees, providing for the imposition, collection, and use of public building impact fees, providing for notice of impact fee rates, providing for severability, codification, liberal construction, and providing an effective date.
Excellent. Good job, good job.
I'll read it back.
All right, I have, the ordinance is read in the record. I have a motion by Commissioner Martinsworth, a second by Commissioner Coleman. We've had public comment. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Before we move on to item 7.
Before we move on, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to take a second to have the closing comments on this.
Oh, that's what I was about to do. So you want to go first?
Sure.
All right.
Just, Mr. Mayor, it occurs to me as we've been having this dialogue, really, we've been talking about impact fees since the day you hired me. And how do they work, and how could they be used in our community and not be a burden? How would we, if we use them, how would we implement them smartly? And I think that, almost 9 years later, I want to commend the commission for the thoughtful approach to it. They're well educated. I'm way more well educated on them as a result of this leadership than I think if I'd worked in any other community. So great job getting us here. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the feedback the whole way through as we learned. And I'd also like to commend our team, all of our staff, but particularly the leadership that was applied by Dallas and by Jamie and by Brian as we went through figuring out impact fees and trying to gather the data and discuss all these items. That it's been a very long effort. It's almost like getting to the end of a long construction project and a ribbon cutting ceremony. Now, we do have one more public hearing, but just as I sat here and listened to the very good debate tonight, the discussion going along with this, I sense that we've come a long ways with regards to this, and I was really pleased with where we are today and at the efforts of our team. Thank you all.
Well, Mike just took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly word for word what I was going to say. No, I shouldn't have had a moment of levity because this tonight, and we do have one more reading, but this is maybe potentially one of the most important things that we're going to do for our children and our grandchildren. There are other local governing bodies that I can tell you they really wish that 30, 40, 50 years ago they had taken this action, right? And we're taking it at a moment in our history that's really going to make a difference in how we grow. And it's going to make a difference in what our community looks like 30 years from now, 40 years from now. And I think too many communities don't have this conversation until it's almost too late. The growth has already happened, right? And now you're just adding a little percentage on the top. We're doing it kind of at our beginning, right? I know that a lot of folks that have been here since Newberry was 500, they think, well, it's already grown. I can tell you, Newberry, we're still at our beginning, right? We are still in our infancy in terms of the potential for the future. So this is a big deal, and I didn't mean to make light of it, but as the manager says, when you've been working on something for 2 years in workshops and meetings, sometimes you get a little loopy at the end, But I look forward to one more reading. I know that on behalf of Commissioner Clark, he's going to appreciate the compromise, helping him feel comfortable and ease into this. And hopefully we can show the community that all 5 of us, 6 of us agree that this is the right thing to do, and this is a generational decision for our kids. And with that, let's move on to another conversation for our kids. Item 7 is Resolution 2023-21. An application by Marcus Hayes and Carlos Gonzalez of Always Bet on Yourself, great name, franchise, to talk about a festival to benefit the kids. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as stated, Resolution 2023-21 would allow for a special temporary use permit for an outdoor concert and festival. benefit kids. The organization is called Kids in Positive Places. The application is by Always Bet on Yourself franchise. It would be a one-day outdoor concert and festival. The date is actually on Easter Sunday, April 9th. It would run from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. The applicant has provided traffic and circulation sketch and stated that they will be contracting with Alachua County Sheriff's Office for traffic control and will have hired private security and parking attendants for the event. Location is actually, many of you are familiar with the Ross property on the eastern end of the city of Newberry, right off Newberry Road. There's a little close-up of the total area. It's a little bit hard to read, but this is the site plan that shows the ingress and egress pattern, where the parking areas are going to be, where the stage and observation area is for the attendees. A little bit more of a close-up there where the concert and stage area are going to be. And it has two fairly large parking areas. And so staff's been working with Mr. Hayes for a good while, and he's been very amenable to the conditions suggested by staff and then by the Planning and Zoning Board. And so I'll just briefly go through those. These are generally the same conditions that when the Ross family had their Easter events in the past that were proposed on that event as well. So as stated, be operation from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. On-site parking provided in two large areas in manner not to exceed the number of vehicles specified for each area. I believe 700 is the limit. They will have parking attendants to get people in. One of the problems with events in that location in the past has been just the generation of a significant amount of traffic out on Newberry Road, backing up Newberry Road. Been working with Mr. Hayes on a plan that would, generally prevent that, and a lot of that was by the nature of how the parking was being done in the past. And so this time he'll have parking attendants. People will go directly in. They'll be parked immediately, rather than stopping anybody at the entrance to collect any fees or donations. They'll do that after they have parked, so that it doesn't hold people on. You can get people off Newberry Road as fast as possible. They'll have to maintain their site triangle visibility for safety purposes, coming in and off the Newberry Road. Number of vehicles, like I said, not exceed 700 on the site. They have a parking tag number 1 through 700 in the windshield of the car, and then as they leave, then they'll turn that in to an attendant on the way out. That was another one of the issues with previous events. There was cruising going on, kind of circling around, and that backed up traffic as well, because then you're adding more people back out on the Newberry Road as they come back around. That's not going to happen this time. As mentioned, if admission fees or donations would be collected, it'll be at the time when they're already parked, not before they come into park. No drive-through activity. All vehicles entering the event would be required to park upon entry. Each participant will be given a flyer upon the event entry, and we'll cover that in a moment. Site would remain clear of all garbage and rubbish. They'll take care of that internally. Portable lighting will be turned off by 10 p.m. so as not to disturb the surrounding neighbors. If they're going to have any large tents or anything, that would be coordinated with an inspection by the fire department or the building department. The offsite signage would be limited to the small in-ground temporary directional signs. The commission in the past has been in favor of allowing temporary signs for non-commercial activity in the right-of-way to be picked up right after the event's over. They'll of course have portable bathrooms and wash stands sufficient to meet the needs of the crowd size. Concessions on site have to meet the health and safety standards of the state. We don't regulate that, but the county health department, the state does. They'll maintain appropriate liability insurance for the event, and they'll maintain a tow truck that will be available on call to remove any vehicle which would violate the site plan or which would block ingress and egress, making it an issue again on Newberry Road. They'll provide private security officers on site in a number sufficient to assist with crowd control. will conform to the City of Newberry noise ordinance, which, excuse me, a lot of people have the idea that if they can hear it from their front porch, that it's a violation, but in reality, there's a allowable level of noise, and so it's whether or not it exceeds that level at the property line. If they use the FDOT property for exit, they haven't been able to get permission for that yet. If they can't, they have an alternative plan for egress. And that they understand that if they violate any of these terms and conditions, it can be revoked. And the one condition that the Planning and Zoning Board requested in addition was no music playing from cars. I believe it was Board Member Long for the parking areas, because then that can, with some of the powerful sound systems that are out there in the cars these days, it could compete with the actual concert going on and cause an additional disturbance. And then the flyer to be handed out, again, this was pretty much along the same lines as the flyers that were handed out, the previous Ross events, event rules outlining what is and is not allowed in there during the participation in the event. And so at the February 6th hearing, Planning and Zoning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the City Commission of Resolution 2023-21, Special Temporary Use Permit 22-02. With that, Mr. Hayes is here if you have any questions for him as the applicant.
Hey, do we have any questions for staff before we ask Mr. Hayes to come up? Any?
I just got a comment. I think it's been a couple of years since they've had any events out there. I think one of the main problems that we did have in the past is parking out on State Road 26, and it seems like that's been addressed. Will there be any kind of signage out there informing people that park out there that their vehicle will be towed?
Mr. Mayor, we could certainly ask the promoter to do that, to put some signage out there saying no parking out on Newberry Road. Just make it very clear that there's zero parking allowed on the right of way.
Right, I don't want somebody just to park out there and then come back and their car would be gone. They don't know why. And has the Sheriff's Department been notified of this event?
Have to ask the applicant, but I'm pretty sure that he has been in contact with them already.
I think it's part of the ordinance now that. Other questions for staff? Let's ask Mr. Hayes about the parking. If you come up, sir, welcome back. So the question is, if somebody are you charging for parking or is it parking for free?
Yes, sir. This event also, I just want to state this, it's not just to raise money just for kids, it's also to raise money to help communities. And that's primarily what we are trying to put together. It's more so something to do that's fun and have the kids there, but at the same time is to go into the areas where it's needed and help. Like last year we was in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, and we was buying water. We did it all off our own dime. Events like this will pay for us to do it in counties and cities like this instead of us being somewhere else helping other places. I just want to state that.
Okay.
Yeah, but parking is, we charge for parking or either an admission to get into the park.
Okay.
So, and that's a donation or a
So
fee.
people can't get out. I guess the concern is if you were charging for parking, they might try to park along Newberry Road and walk in.
Yeah, they can't do that.
They won't be able to do that because it won't save any money.
No, and we can put up caution signs with signs up and stuff like that all up and down the road over there just to make sure. And that's no problem to do to make that happen. Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions? I want to reiterate, because I asked you this for the P&Z, because you've got a very tight security process. Right?
And I actually have them secured as well. Night security, public safety, Gainesville, Florida. We have 20 guys out there.
And so you're searching people as they come in, opening bags, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, from the parking area, which we're not allowing nobody to hang out in the parking area, so no one can be around their cars. We do have a car expo area because I'm actually part of a car club. So we got some guys that's come in to park their cars right in the front area and some of these nice cars like the Hellcats and stuff like that, and they'll be in their area, but they're paid to be there. But anybody, like any patrons come in, they'll have to leave the cars. It can't be hanging out by. You're welcome to go to your car if you want to sit in your car. But you can't hang out by the car. We're gonna clear a parking lot, keep the parking lot clear, and we're gonna have an entrance area to where once you come into the actual park area where the vendors are and where the concert area is, you'll be searched and you'll be checked.
Okay.
Just too much
And that,
snipers and stuff going on.
and I just want to reiterate for this board, like we did for the P&Z, that level of security is what you and your company require to host this event.
Yes,
That's
sir.
not a requirement that the city has imposed upon you.
Yes, sir. And it's just us to make sure, Mayor, I believe we spoke before. I was telling you I would like to do more events for the city if possible.
Absolutely.
Later on, because there's plenty of property out here in Gainesville is getting all bought up. And it's getting tighter. So, we can get some things going out here, or you guys got some ideas, y'all want to work on some things, we can do some stuff out here, definitely, and get Gainesville and Ocala to come here.
Yeah, I love it. Commissioner Mazon?
Yes. So as you mentioned that they could go and hang out in the car, right? Just as long as they're not hanging outside the car. Will you have security in the area to make sure that they're not playing music in the car?
Correct.
Okay. So you will have security out in the parking lot.
Okay, any other questions? Madam Attorney, did we read this resolution in? If not, we do that for us now.
I will. This is Resolution 2023-21, a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, pursuant to an application for a special temporary use permit to allow an outdoor concert and festival as authorized under Section 14.10 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing approval for a special permit for temporary use outdoor concert and festival within an agricultural A zoning district as provided in Section 4.4 on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, on tax parcel number 04370-004-001, 04370-003-000, 04372-007-000, and 042-372-006-000, consisting of approximately 13.33 more or less acres, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Mazon. Questions or comments on the motion floor from the dais? Public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Have fun, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hope it great.
I got one question.
Uh-huh.
Moving forward, I got another event I possibly want to do. RSVP, maybe about 300 cars.
You don't have to send it to me personally. You can just bring it up here. That's okay. I can RSVP right now if you want. Yeah, I'll be there. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
okay.
I'm sorry. What's your question?
No, okay. So I understand the level of this event. It requires this. What about an event about half the size when you know exactly how many people is going to be there?
That's a good question for Mr. Thomas there in the back. So if you guys want to step outside and you can
Oh no, I'll
explain
call
that
that
to
guy.
them.
He owes me lunch, so we'll sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll sit down and talk about it.
He's got all the
Sure.
what triggers this and what doesn't trigger this and that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Right?
definitely.
All right.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You're looking forward to it.
I thought that was Kevin Hart.
All right.
Doesn't it look like Kevin Hart?
He's short enough to be Kevin Hart.
Yeah. Let's move to item 8, which is request for large-scale future land use map. To amend from ag to public. Let's go ahead and read the ordinance into the record as John Paul is making his way down. And John Paul, I'm going to step out. So when she's done with the ordinance, just launch right in, okay? I'll be right back. Commissioner Mazon has the gavel just in case.
This is ordinance number 2023-09, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.31842 and 3 Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classifications from agriculture to public on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcel numbers 02538-008-000 and 02538-009-001, consisting of approximately 96 acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development Department. As read into the record, this is a future land use map amendment for 96 acres owned by the city, rezoning it from agriculture to public. Since the city is the applicant on this, I'll be providing the overview presentation as well as a recommendation all in one go. On the screen before you is the general location of the property within the City of Newberry limits. It is located on County Road 337 between Southwest 18th Road and Southwest 30th Avenue, directly adjacent to the existing wastewater treatment facility. This land was purchased by the city for the purposes of expanding that wastewater treatment facility. And again, the current future land use is agriculture. The proposed is public. Here's an aerial of the subject property showing some of the adjacent uses. On March 6th, the Planning and Zoning Board heard this item and is recommending approval of the future land use map amendment. With this future land use amendment, we are not approving any development for the site. That will be forthcoming in the form of a site and development plan. However, some of the identified and potential uses for this property are the expansion of the municipal wastewater treatment facility, a small farm meat processing and training facility, a rural collection center for household hazardous waste. With the stormwater retention area, there's going to be an educational component to that, where students from the school can come and see how wetlands work, and as well as a composting component to that environmental park, it is being called. Looking at concurrency, traffic, we just did a preliminary analysis. A more detailed analysis will be forthcoming in the form of a traffic study. As far as impacts for wastewater, this future land use map amendment paves the way for the expansion of wastewater capacity. Schools and parks, there are no residents being generated by these uses, so there are no concurrency issues to address there. Staff finds the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development regulations, and staff recommends the following motions: to approve the ordinance on first reading, because this is a large-scale land use map amendment, to also authorize the city manager or their designee to transmit to the state. That completes my presentation.
Okay, we got any questions for staff? Once again, I applaud us working through this process, putting ourselves through the same things we put private companies through. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Mazon, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments, questions, motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Come on down. Mr. Public, we appreciate you sticking it out with us.
Thank you, appreciate it. Paul Hornby again, Newberry resident for 35 years. One thing I didn't see, and I could be misinformed, but is there also a county fire training center being contemplated for this land, or is it adjacent?
That is this property.
It is.
But that's not part of this. So the environmental park moving to public would happen no matter what goes on there, because the wastewater is going to go on there. So that's what so the motion in front of us tonight is just taking it from ag to that public property.
Okay. And my concerns are just overarching. You've heard some of these already through previous meetings, but you know, you've got a lot of stuff going on there. What isn't mentioned is the Westone development, the 337 investment development that's totaling 1,000 homes right there. I'm just wondering, you know, how's the current road infrastructure going to handle just the development piece of this? I mean, when we can't even get through downtown, it's still 2-lane. I see a lot of traffic coming out there to go down 337. If you're punching out 18th or 15th, you're gonna have construction vehicles around all the schools, which I'm sure the parents aren't appreciative of. I don't get it. You know, the piecemeal approach that's being taken, these components standing on themselves have value. I get that. But I'm just asking, please look at this stuff holistically. If you look at the big picture, it's very challenging for the average citizen to see how this is all going to get done without huge impacts on us for years, when we can't even sort out downtown Newberry.
And I would say to you, sir, that my previous metaphor is 100% applicable here, right? And I don't want to get into a conversation because this isn't right the moment for it. But what we're having to do here, because we always have to do everything individually, piece by piece.
I get that. Yeah.
But everything that we've done in the past 5 years has been that holistic approach. So part of that potential MEPAC and Fire College agreement is the county's going to fix 337. So that part is in there. We've got the two-way pairs working with the state to alleviate downtown. So we can only have one conversation at a time. And so when people come into one meeting or they come to one workshop, they say, well, you're doing this piecemeal. Where's the strategy? Where's the holistic? And you have to be with this board for the last 6 years, some of you longer, some of you 80 years, and attend every workshop like they do, and hear every visioning session, answer all the surveys in order to get that holistic approach. So the holistic approach is there, but it takes the commitment on the resident to be a part of all of the meetings to see the holistic, because we can only talk about one part at a time. And as you've heard tonight, it's a 2-year process to get for us to get through the impact fee. So I 100% understand a resident's perspective who says, well, y'all started talking about this 2 years ago. It hasn't happened yet. When do these things happen? But in order to do things professionally, strategically, thoughtfully, it takes some time to do all of those things. But there's not one criticism that I've seen that you've said to me when we talk, or that you've said on social media, that we actually haven't addressed, and we have addressed it in a really thoughtful way. I'm sorry you haven't been part of those conversations and part of those meetings. I'm glad you are joining them and being part of them now, but they are happening. 337, Newberry Road, wastewater facility treatments, right? I mean, there are strategies and plans in place to address all of those things. They take time. And I get I'm a resident here. I drive down 337 every day, dodging the potholes. Mm-hmm. I understand every frustration you have. I share them. And that's why this board is working to address them. If I could wave a magic wand and do it all overnight, but this board just passed an impact fee probably 20 years before any other community would even consider it. Yeah. So when you talk about vision and strategy and doing things in a planned way, I would challenge you to put the city of Newberry against any other community in this state or the country and compare our record and the things that we've done over the last 6-7 years with anyone else.
I mean, I appreciate that, and I certainly understood the earlier reference about walking into the movie in the middle, okay?
Yeah.
But as you can see, it's hard for people to come to these meetings, okay? And I realize you guys have your plates full, you have your families and all your work too, but it's hard.
It is.
And a lot of the neighbors are very concerned about this.
Which is why I've come to neighborhood workshops, and I've come and sat in people's driveways and talked to them.
And we've asked developers to meet with us, and they have not done that, okay? And I'm sorry Mr. McDaniel left early, because I would have liked to talk to him. So you talk about opportunities to dialogue, they're not always there, okay?
Well, I'm a cell phone call away, anytime you want to chat. I appreciate it.
If you're developing these homes, I would talk to you.
All right.
If you're not, Mr. McDaniel is.
Okay.
He's not listening to us.
Thank you, sir. We had a motion? Properly seconded? All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 9, still in legislative. Madam Attorney, would read ordinance 2023-10 into the record.
This is an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, subsection 2 and 3, Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163315, Florida statutes providing for a change in future land use classifications from agriculture to public on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, tax parcel number 02538-004-000, consisting of approximately 2.5 acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development. The request before you tonight is to change the future land use map designation for a 2.5 acre parcel abutting the municipal cemetery. On the screen is just a general location map of the property within the city limits. It is a blip on that map. Here is a close-up image showing the current future land use, which is agriculture. The intention is to change that to public. Here's an aerial of the subject property showing some of the adjacent uses. And it includes, just like the last image, some of the proposed developments for the area, as well as the existing. City acquired the property in 2021. This is purely ministerial in nature. We're just aligning the future land use with the current use of the land. No additional impacts or development are proposed with this request. On March 6, 2023, the Planning and Zoning Board did recommend approval of this petition. Staff does find the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations, and staff recommends approval of the ordinance on first reading. Since this is a small scale, if approved tonight, we'll be bringing it back for March 27th for a second reading. That completes my presentation.
Questions of staff? There are no questions. Did we read that ordinance into the record?
We did.
We did, okay. If there are no questions, I have a motion from Commissioner Maison.
Yes.
Second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Commissioner Coleman's fading away on us down there. Any comments, questions on the dais? Public comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That's going to take us into quasi-judicial. So I will, since we're in a new meeting, we'll reread. We're here in a quasi-judicial procedure. This means the commission will stop being a legislative body and become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony. The substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following, quote, all public testimony taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination on documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. Giving opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. I'm going to ask the city attorney, as soon as she gets back, to read into the record the ordinance by title only. And we can do swearing in if you need to fire up the computer. Let's do swearing in first. Madam Clerk, were you swearing anybody wanting to speak to this item? Hang on, Mike, are you going to speak? Are you going to talk to this? Okay, I'm going to hold you to that now. Go ahead.
Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, Madam Attorney, would you read into the record ordinance for us, please?
This is ordinance number 2023-11, ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of 218 acres more or less pursuant to an application by the City of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning agricultural A and residential single-family RSF2 zoning district to the public facilities PF zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, Alachua County tax parcel numbers 02536-000-000, 02538-001-000, 02538-004-000, 02538-005-000, 02538-007-000, 02538-008-000, 02538-009-001, and 02538-010-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
She's trying to give me a run for my money. That's what's going on. She's throwing down the gauntlet. All right, I see. We're going to do ex parte, just like swearing in for this one and the next. Commissioner Coleman? None. Commissioner Farnsworth? None. Commissioner Maison? None. I'm a non-voting mayor, but I have nothing to disclose either. We're gonna explain the order of presentation. We'll follow for this one and the next one. As long as no one new enters the room, I won't go through all this again. We're gonna hear from the staff overview first, and the applicant can present with no time limit. Staff can report and give a recommendation, no time limit, and not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party interviewer status for this one or the next one. That's gonna move us to applicant cross-examines and staff cross-examinations. Member decision-making body through the chair can ask questions of the staff of the applicant. Then we'll hear final arguments, and the city attorney will advise the decision-making body one time for this one and the next one. Then we'll deliberate, and after deliberation, the motion will be taken to approve petitions, continue, or deny. Staff, give us an overview. And if
you,
the
Mr.
applicant's
Mayor.
not here, just launch right on. You are the
Yes, so John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development. This is a request from the city, so I'll be providing a review presentation and recommendation without interruption. So the request before you tonight is rezoning from agricultural and residential single-family to public facilities. Public facilities is a new zoning district that the city recently adopted. This encompasses 217 acres, which is the existing municipal cemetery, the existing wastewater treatment facility, as well as the environmental park that we looked at previously. This is the general location of the subject property within the city limits, just in the southwest quadrant along County Road 337. This is between Southwest 15th Avenue and Southwest 30th. Part of this development includes part of that expansion of 15th Avenue, so that should hopefully in the future run all the way to 337 and beyond. That's the plan. But anyway, as you can see, the current zoning for the property is a mix of residential, single-family, and agriculture. Now that we have a public facility zoning district, we're going to be aligning what the intended use of the site, which is for public facilities, with the zoning district. Here is the subject property in its totality with some of the adjacent uses and abutting roadways. On March 6th, the Planning and Zoning Board heard this item and they did recommend approval. And again, just going to put this as a caveat for all of the future land use and zoning. No development is being approved tonight. These are just zoning and land use. In this particular case, we're looking at zoning for the properties. Some of the existing and identified and potential uses for the property are the existing wastewater treatment facility cemetery, expansion of that wastewater treatment facility, a small farm meat processing and training center, rural collection, stormwater, composting component, and somewhere within the site, a fire training facility. Skip that, sorry about that. As with the future land use for the 96 acre, the city is currently engaged in conversations on doing a comprehensive study of the area that it does address improvements on 337 and possibly impacts within other developments that impact kind of our regional road network that runs through the city, both US 41 and State Road 26. With wastewater, these uses generally will create more capacity, and so there is not much to look there because there is no residential component. Schools and parks is a non-factor. Staff finds that this aligns the zoning district with the existing and proposed uses as well as the future land use. Staff finds the request consistent with the comprehensive plan, land development regulations. And it's just as a caveat, this rezoning is contingent upon the prior to future land use map amendments being adopted, one of which we have to send to the state. So bringing this back will be dependent on that one that we have to send to the state. With that, we recommend approval.
All right, thank you. Public comment? Nope. Sure. Cross-examine yourself? Nope.
Not in public.
Got any questions?
No, and I haven't talked to anybody.
We already did that. You just reiterated, right?
Motion.
Now you trying, we gotta get the city attorney's advice first.
What's her
See,
advice?
Madam Attorney?
Any decision made by this board must be supported by competent and substantial evidence.
I don't know, you think JP looks
I
confident?
don't know, that confident thing is.
That's done.
Monday.
All right, thank you, Madam Attorney. We'll enter into deliberations. There are no deliberations. I'll have a motion.
Motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Mazon. think it's your turn, Commissioner Coleman.
Okay, I've been so. I'll second that motion.
I got a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. We're still in quasi judicial. Nobody new has entered the room, so we don't need to read through all of that. We did ex parte and we swore in, so we'll jump right into reading the ordinance, please.
This is ordinance number 2023-13, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of 4.29 acres, more or less pursuant to an application by the City of Newberry amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from residential single-family RSF2 zoning district to public facilities PF zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, Alachua County tax parcel number 02035-000-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am so glad that, we used to go to the library and the lady would read to us. If she would have read to me.
You'd be a genius right now. All right,
Thank
John
you.
Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is a rezoning of the municipal public works site. It's approximately 4.3 acres. The map on the screen now is just a general location of the property within the city limits. Here's the current zoning of the property, which is residential single family, in which this use is a special exception. Now that we have adopted a public facilities zoning district, we are rezoning this site to public facilities. Here's an aerial of the property showing its current development and it being adjacent to Lois Fort and being within a residential neighborhood. What this request will do, if approved, will align the zoning district with the existing use of land. There is no change, no additional impacts proposed. This request was heard by the Planning and Zoning Board on March 6th, in which they recommended approval of this petition. Staff finds the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development regulations, and staff recommends the City Commission approve the ordinance. If approved, second reading will be on March 27th, 2023.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll skip over cross-examinations. Member decision-making body, do you have any questions? Hearing no questions, assuming there are no final arguments, we've already been advised decision-making applicable law will enter into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll have a motion.
Motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Maison, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Great job, John Paul. We appreciate moving us through those expeditiously. And is Brian still here? Is he hiding behind? There you are. Come on down and talk to us about solar farms. I really thought we'd have some public here for solar farms. Seem to have a lot to say on Facebook.
So much easier to comment on Facebook.
All right, take us through our presentation, and just for the board's edification, I asked for this to come back, and there's really only one part of our ordinance that I want us to reconsider, and it is the language on buffering, because I have had a lot of conversations with residents about solar farms, and I've had a lot of conversations with just people in general. And 99% of the concern about a solar farm is people just think it's not aesthetically pleasing to look at. In my mind, that's a buffering issue, right? But our ordinance, and I don't want to be stealing Brian's thunder, but it is getting late. Our ordinance has a buffer, but it doesn't have a vegetative buffer, so that there's nothing growing up in between. So that's what I've asked. If you guys have anything else about the solar farm in particular you'd like to discuss, absolutely it's on the table. But Brian, take us through the requirements for solar farm, 20,000 foot level, but let's zero in on that buffering.
I'm done. You got it all.
I got it all. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Ware.
Yeah.
So just a quick review of what was passed in 2019, I think it was. One of the primary changes the commission made was to allow for solar farms or solar energy collection arrays to be placed in agricultural, industrial, and planned developments by right. So you don't have to request a rezoning to a commercial category or anything like that. It can be done just like planting any other crop, basically. It can allow for supporting facilities, performance standards. There is that minimum 10-foot buffer, which goes around the entire perimeter of whatever the size of the farm, the solar farm is. There currently, as the mayor stated, no landscaping requirements. I think, if I remember correctly, when we talked about that, it was brought up, but the thought was that when you're talking about hundreds of acres, you're talking about such, distances that it would potentially be cost prohibitive to try to require some kind of a vegetative landscaping buffer. And it has to have at least a 6-foot tall chain link fence surrounding the entire property. Maximum height restrictions, security fencing can go up to 8 feet. If they want to go higher than 6, solar panels can be limited at 15 feet, signage to 9 feet. Of course, there's no restrictions on transmission lines that are coming in to connect to the facility. For to and from maintenance, they do have to have 20-foot wide clear access ways. And for access to supporting structures, if they had an admin building or they had a control tower center or whatever, it'd be a 20-foot stabilized, and that stabilized is a requirement for the fire department and emergency vehicles to be able to reach it. Site and development plans, they do have to be submitted to Land Development Regulation Administrator, that would be me, for staff review, and within 30 days of that submittal, the LDR administrator will either approve with conditions or deny the application. This is also a departure from our typical site plan review, in that the typical site plan goes before the Planning and Zoning Board and it goes before the City Commission for final approval, 2 hearings. Again, going back to the original thought, this is essentially the same thing as planting a crop. So while there are physical structures that are being put in place, we want to be able to review that. We don't necessarily want to make them go through the entire process for site plan, because we all know what an array looks like when it's spread out. Leaving it with staff to go ahead and do a staff approval, avoiding the need to bring it back before the commission. And if they do require a variance to any of the conditions that are in the code, then they do have to go back, like any other project would have to go back before the Board of Adjustment for final approval. So if they don't want to do the 10-foot, or they don't want to do fencing or whatever, they would have to come back and get approval from the Board of Adjustment. And really, that's, like you said, at the 20,000-foot level. If there's additional direction that the commission wants to provide staff, we can always go back and create an amendment to the existing code. Mr. Mayor.
And what I would suggest is, for the small rural residential development that you guys that ordinance that allows people to develop 20 or 25 houses in a year outside the urban service area, same concern. You're dropping little neighborhoods down in traditionally agricultural areas. We just don't want to see it, right? So you guys did the 2 acres, but there's like a 30 or 50-foot vegetative buffer in that. I don't think we need to go 30 feet, but I think 15 is better than 10. To address the cost issue, how do we write the language? Because, I think for most of these areas, most farmers end up with a fairly vegetative buffer just because they don't spray their fences all that well, right? So there's already something there.
Well, it's a windbreak.
It's a windbreak, right? So you're just saying, I'm not advocating that we force people to spend, $100,000 on hedges and berms and those kinds of things, but just, pine trees, scrub oaks, letting the bushes grow up. What do y'all think? You can leave it the way it is, but I think if we can address this, we can take care of 90% of the concern about solar farms. Commissioner Cole.
Well, like if you go out there to Allcrest, that's a 15-foot buffer right there, and you can't see any houses from the highway out there into Allcrest.
And that's what I'm thinking. So 15 feet,
Yep.
15 feet, change it to 15 with, yeah.
I was gonna say, one thing I would want to point out, though, for your consideration, right now, we have a 10-foot buffer requirement, no landscaping required. If you go to a landscaping requirement, which would say, for instance, require some form of trees, the one consideration for a solar farm, solar array, is that trees block sunlight. And they also fall on, drop limbs and things on the solar array. And so if the commission goes that route, they might want to rethink the width of the buffer too, because you're going to want to probably extend the width of the buffer to eliminate some of those problems, especially falling on or dropping limbs on.
I take your point, but just because we have a 15-foot buffer doesn't mean that they have to put right up against the buffer.
They can
give
do as far
themselves
as
another.
yes, sir. They can do as
And
far
I
as they
don't,
want.
I guess that's my question. Does a vegetative buffer necessarily mean trees? Or is it, because I'm seeing what you're talking about, right? Just the
Yeah,
natural
just
foliage that will, and I guess in most of those, there's a couple of pine trees in between, but if, what?
It's more understory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When it's vegetated, I mean, typically we look for a mixture of trees or shrubs, because trees, as they develop, when you get a big canopy at top, but you got a
Right.
12-foot wide stick and then nothing for.
Nothing
See
under
right
feet
through
to
it,
the
right.
next tree.
So, I'm, if vegetative buffer covers it, we just leave it a vegetative buffer. If we need to get specific and say, you gotta plant cedar trees so that it blocks but that now becomes written in stone. I'm good with vegetative buffer. Even if you have to plant something, it'll grow up over time. It'll block it eventually, The whole idea here is not to maintain it, right? Let it go.
Right.
Let it get thick and.
And Mr. Ware, of course, another option is to direct staff to go back and do a little more research on appropriate landscaping for.
I think, 15, if you think 20 is better, I'm fine with 20. I think 10 is just a little bit 10 feet is not that long, right? So I'm good with 15 vegetative, and let's bring it back. The way I understand it, there is no solar farm happening in Newberry in any immediate future. I know there's a lot of concern about one at 337, but I'm not hearing that that's happening anytime, so as long as we can get this done before anybody comes in front of us, so I'm ready to move on it, because I think this is just the one piece that we gotta fix, vegetative buffer. So a little bit thicker, vegetative, and I think we've done our job at protecting the neighbors around from having to see, and I take the criticism that, they would be up here much more upset about having to look at 1,000 houses out there than solar farms, right? But this, I think, is a way to keep the peace.
Mr. Ware, do you think we do have sort of a definition currently in our buffering, our vegetative buffering requirements that kind of spells out distances between plants, or do we just want to stick with what we already have?
Well, you've listened to the conversation about what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Is the language we have going to achieve that I pretty much can't see what's behind it?
We perhaps might want to be a little more specific.
You'll
Yeah, we'll,
evaluate. So you know what we're trying to achieve. You'll bring back, because this will have 2 readings. It's an ordinance, right?
yes, sir.
So you'll bring it back and say, okay, after evaluating it, we need to go to 20 feet and we need to add this language, or 15 feet vegetative buffer's fine.
Yeah, but I understand where he's at here.
Yeah.
Some places might be covered up, and then there might be some that's not covering it.
Or it could take
'Cause it ain't
10 years
natural.
it
Yeah.
could take 10 years to grow, so.
This is out there on 337, way on out there on Bronson Highway part, that's in the city of Newberry. It takes a pine 100 years to grow out there on them sand hills.
Ain't even saying that.
It's true.
Is it just around the road, or is it the entire property?
Well, you got neighbors all the way around it. But I would say if it's something in there that if it's they would have to stick evergreens wherever it's visible.
I think we need
like
something
that.
more definitive than what we.
Yeah.
You guys evaluate it, bring it back. We want to achieve a goal here. So whatever we need, however definitive we need to get to achieve the goal, that's what the language needs to be. Evergreens, I mean, we plant cedars all over our farm
Yeah,
because we don't
cedars.
want to see anybody else. It's not because we don't want them to see us, we just don't want to see anybody else.
That's typically the choice, yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
they're big, green, bushy. As long as you don't turn the cows in to them too early, they'll grow all right.
Yeah, or goats.
Yeah, the goats are the worst. Good?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all in agreement that we need to do this for our residents to
Right.
protect it.
Who built the, solar farm out near Chiefland?
Anybody know?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of who.
Oh,
I
that's
would
all,
imagine-
that's,
I would imagine Duke. They're
it wasn't
taking the
Duke,
lead on
it's,
what? Borges.
no, the, I used to be on their.
Another business you got?
No, the co-op there.
Central Florida.
Did you already said it?
No.
Okay.
So Central Florida built their own?
Yeah, they built one out there. Or it's what, I was told that was
I
Central
mean, it was,
Florida.
it looked, you look at that from the road, and I mean, it looks horrible.
Yeah,
Definitely needs to be some kind of buffer there.
yeah. I mean, I feel the same way about, never mind, RV park. Every time I drive by that, I'm like, man, ain't a tree out in that whole thing, you know? We'll do a better job, right?
All right.
You guys know the vision, you guys know the goal, right? And we'll get it done. We have plenty of time before anything moves forward with any project, so. That brings us to comments. Comments, Commissioner Coleman, you got any? Oh, no, sorry. Manager first.
Mr. Mayor, I was thinking that maybe I droned on too long recently, and this was my payment for it.
Never,
Mr. Mayor,
never.
just a couple things. I traveled to Tallahassee last week. Last week was the first week of the 2023 Florida legislative session. Things were pretty slow on a Thursday, and I heard they were really cooking Monday through Wednesday, so I think I definitely picked the best day to go. Met with all three of our representatives, and this year we had three, which are Representative Clemens, who, when you see him, congratulate him. He is the Speaker Pro Tem, number 2 position in the House. For Representative Clemens, I also met with both senators, Senator Perry and Senator Bradley. Senator Bradley's territory is everything north of State Road 26. Senator Perry is everything south. I'm hoping there is an advantage to both senators supporting us. That to me is double the support when things that are pro-Newberry move out onto the Senate floor. We have 2 applications in for legislative appropriations. We have a $1 million application in for our wastewater treatment plant, which is in addition to the $10 million or so that we secured last year. And then the second is for $1 million for an elevated water tank, which was something that the commission authorized us to do last spring, and kind of was under the radar when we were having the conversation with you about the what we would put on our legislative agenda. So we had 2 applications in. We were clear that the wastewater grant is our big priority, number 1 need. If for some reason Newberry merits 2 projects, then the elevated storage tank would be the second one. And I handed out to you some information regarding some proposed legislation. As usual, there is a lot of bills that are being introduced that would have negative effects on elected officials and communities. I saw a statistic last year, about 3,000 bills are filed every year, and 80 make it all the way through the process. But of the 2,920 that don't make it, a lot of them are because of feedback they get from constituents. So I'm going to begin the process of sharing all of these bills that would have negative effects, potentially negative effects on Newberry with us. If one strikes a chord with you and you're willing to call our elected officials and say, hey, this would impact us negatively in this way, I think that's always helpful. They like that feedback, just like y'all appreciate the feedback from time to time. One of the things I'm really trying hard to do this year is, some of those 3,000 bills, which would potentially be negative to Newberry, are dead on arrival. They're never gonna move, nor do they merit a lot of consideration or advocating, just let them go. So trying to figure out from our consultants and from our legislatures, these bills stand a chance and we really need to pay attention, and these are really dead on arrival are important. So, anyway, just wanted y'all to know, we'll be making 2 or 3 more trips. One of the things that makes you successful is being visible and vocal. So, we'll have 2 or 3 more trips in the next 4 weeks, and think that it is way more, successful if we're traveling with elected officials. So I encourage you guys, we'll let you know dates that we plan to be there, to take a trip with us to Tallahassee, spend the day, see what's going on, and have a positive, effect on our elected officials when we meet with them. Mr. Mayor, just a couple of announcements that all of these, you have copies on your dais. The Alachua County Conservation Board has invited elected officials to a dinner. You have funding in your budget for your ticket. If you'd like to attend, just let me know, or Ada, and we'll get you signed up for that. There's also, the city of High Springs is doing a wall fest, where they're painting a bunch of murals, large landscape murals in their community. Should be, and they do it in a festival format, so it's about a week-long event. They're kicking it off with a dinner. If you'd like to attend the dinner, you have the invitation. Again, let Ada or I know, we'll get you signed up. The final date for that, for those reservations was last Thursday or Friday, but we can get you in if we find out tomorrow. So, and if you don't make the dinner, just ride through and see the event. It's, whether you like murals or not, getting a whole festival come in where people, I think they're gonna do 8 or 10, murals, large murals on walls, I think would be kind of a fun event, to watch happening in one of our neighboring communities. And then, Mr. Mayor, the final thing that I dropped off is the first of the legislation that's coming out, that would negatively impact Newberry. One is just, feedback that was provided by a council person from Seminole County, kind of his version of what would negatively affect financial reporting. The essence of the bill is that there's a long multi-page financial disclosure form that all of you would be required to fill out, as well as me and Judy and Scott. So, and potentially Dallas as well, which may be the reason to just let it pass if we know Dallas is gonna get wrapped into it. But that would be something that might say, look, we already do this level of reporting. It seems like an overstep to have to make us do an 8-page document that's more complex than our annual tax forms. So, like I said, that's just, the first thing that came to my office this legislative session. Thought I'd give you a heads up on that. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Before we move on, the Wall Dog Gala and the conservation, that's the same night, March 25th?
Yes.
So if anybody's gonna go, let's see if we can divvy up and make a showing at both of those. So I'll just coordinate with you. If anybody wants to go to one over the other one, we'll try to mix it up and go somewhere else. All right? Good. All right, who are we at now? Madam Attorney? You got anything?
Not tonight.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk?
I don't have anything, thank you.
All right, no election, so that just makes it a little bit easier, right? Commissioner Coleman?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
I have a question.
All right.
Why do we have the mayor pro tem do the Board of Adjustments?
That was set up by some previous commission about 20 years ago. I think a young Commissioner Farnsworth spearheaded it that way.
I doubt that.
I've asked the same question, and that was how the ordinance was written. So is that something that the commission can go back and rewrite? Board of Adjustment is chaired by and I don't know the philosophy behind that decision.
Yeah, why?
Yeah. They don't get to choose?
No, they got
Right.
it.
It says they don't have to be there.
Yeah.
provides training for the future mayor.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me like with what we're doing with the planning and zoning, now is the time to just finally say, the mayor chairs all the meetings.
Take it all.
I don't know why the mayor wouldn't be expected to be at BOA meetings anyway.
Take it
right?
all.
But I
Yeah,
don't have a vote.
I mean, do we need to rewrite the ordinance, or how do we,
We'd have to rewrite is that by resolution or ordinance, the structure of the BOA? Ordinance? Yeah, so.
so it'll be ready by next meeting?
I mean,
It'll be ready soon. We'll commit to a meeting or two.
I mean, that's a one-line change in the BOA structure. Mayor chairs the BOA. I mean, it's always,
Yeah, so is it only the BOA?
No,
well, we already have it for the CRA.
Board of Adjustment, you're right.
CRA,
Yeah.
the mayor boards the CRA, the mayor will board the P and Z, or chair the P and Z, and the HARB. So this would make it uniform across the board. And I do remember sometimes Bill just left.
Yeah, I think,
But I don't, I mean, in my mind, all of those meetings they're kind of part and parcel.
I mean, not that Tony didn't do a great job, but,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why.
We're always
Why it's done
passing the
that way.
gavel all over
Yeah.
the place, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I think if you want to by the next meeting, I think we absolutely have to ask the city attorney.
She's got it ready already. I'll watch her typing over there. She's like, boom, done.
Between Danielle and I, I'm sure we can get it done.
And
That
while,
was easy.
while we're on the subject, can we go ahead and elect the mayor pro tem tonight?
Yeah, I see where you're headed there. That's the veteran statesman thinking right there. That all you comments?
Yeah, that's it.
Commissioner Bazan?
Yeah. All right, just a friendly reminder, Spring Festival is here, April 1st. Once again, the booths are all sold out, 120 vendors, bands, dancing, pictures, bouncy house. Sounds like fun, yeah? Oh, they're gonna have a camel there. John Paul's gonna ride the camel? All right, he's gonna spearhead that whole thing. You've been nominated. So, sounds like a lot of fun. So come out on April 1st and join us at Spring Festival here in Newberry, Florida. And Jamel, if I'm pronouncing it, Jamel Cheeseborough, man, he every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30, he spearheads the dancing. His expertise are put to the test, even for beginners. So if you don't know how to dance, go out to MLK every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30, Dallas, and learn how to dance. I thought you were gonna say you had skills. Guess not. So every time, okay, I go to Bass Pro Shop, right? I look for that catfish. I can never find him. It's probably because he doesn't look like his photo.
I didn't even hear it.
I'm not a bad job guy.
Come on, catfish,
Does look like his photo.
catfish, catfish. I know they are, right? Oh, thank you, attorney. Oh, man, I'm sorry. I thought I was talking to...
Man, I'm sorry. I thought I was cool until this joke. I realized I've done lost count.
Hey, you lose that one? All right, here, I'll give you a better one. You better for you, okay. Oh, yeah. Did you hear that Bruce Lee's brother? You know he had a brother, Bruce Lee?
Yeah.
That dude's never late going anywhere. His name's Earl. Let it marinate.
There we go. See, that's my level. I got that level.
They're dad jokes, people.
So Commissioner Bazan hit the Spring Fling April 1st. Just a reminder, West Fest is April 22nd, and the Drug Take Back Day is April 22nd. Drug Take Back Day will happen at the fire department. Joy mentioned it earlier tonight. And I think that does it for me, except I do want to continue putting on your radar the Newberry Historical Society that we are seeking to create. I'm working on the mission statement right now. I'll have a plan to bring to you guys, but I believe that, given our growth rate, we need to take the extra effort to preserve our history and teach that history to our kids so they know about Newberry, about our history, how we evolved, what we've done, what we've accomplished, all of those kinds of things. So as new people join us, they kind of can become part of our history. So I'm going to keep coming to you guys with that as we get it more. It seems like there was something else you and I talked about, Mike, that you said you need to remind folks of that, but. All right, yeah, yep. And we're going into CRA next, so don't go anywhere. This meeting is public comment. Seeing none, we are adjourned. And we are, where's that? There's that one. All right, now we are. I'll start with an approval of the agenda. Approve. I have a motion to approve Commissioner Mazon, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments, questions, motion for the dais? From the public, hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published. Motion. I have a motion from Commissioner Mazon, second from Commissioner Farnsworth. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Our first agenda item is to amend the 2023 budgets.
I was gonna let you take it, Brian.
I was gonna say, all right, Brian's branching out here a little bit. I like it, right? Push yourself.
He is the executive director,
Right.
after all.
Yeah. Know your numbers, right? Know your numbers. There we go. Dallas, take us
Mr. Mayor
through.
and board members, as you are aware, we received additional funding this year for the CRA in the amount of about $225,000. The city has already appropriated that money to the CRA. We had a grand summit meeting not too long ago to discuss all the projects that we proposed to the CRA board. I took copious good notes and then promptly lost them all. So I am punting this agenda to the city manager, who will discuss potential projects for the CRA board's consideration.
Thank you, Dallas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we got the very good news of, a month or so in, not at all, that our CRA revenues were going to be significantly more than than we anticipated that they were going to be. And that's a great problem to have, and it's not a one-year problem that we had. This is going on for the next 20 years, so we got a great jump out on our CRA. With the additional revenues, I believe it was $225 additional dollars, and 225,000 additional dollars.
$225, we're, make a sign.
So, and if you'll remember in the CRA, one of the rules with the CRA is very similar to CIP. It needs to be a project that's not previously been identified in your CIP. So staff and I sat down and we developed a very long list of projects, and the secretary for that meeting promptly lost his notes. And so we worked to put it back together as best we could, realizing that we really are 6 months into this fiscal year, and whatever the commission directs us to undertake this year is likely going to be, project concept study. We're probably not going to be able to conceptualize, design, and construct a new road anywhere in Newberry, but we can certainly get a lot of the groundwork done so that when we step into next fiscal year, we are very close to going to construction and can start making some meaningful improvements within our CRA district. So the projects identified are in no particular order. I would say most of them you're familiar with. 260th Street reconstruction is the street segment between Laws Fork Park and the city yard. It's about 2 city blocks worth of road improvements that would essentially be curb gutter, sidewalks, some streetscaping, something to help us with redevelopment of downtown, make that walkable and give people more access to the public park there. Southwest 254th has been an ongoing discussion for the entire time I've been here. It's the roadway between the doctor's office, the old bank building, and 1906 farmhouse. There used to be a center island with a tree in it, and then we did temporarily last year, we put some outdoor seating out there with a retaining wall, and that wasn't widely used, but that we developed some concepts. We've shown it to the commission. If the commission wants to turn that into a side street project, that's a convenient one for us to get started on, because FDOT plans no work down on that particular side street segment, so we could do our piece ahead of DOT and they would just connect to it. And it's probably the most talked about downtown street segment since I've been here. We have talked about doing a road resurfacing project with CDBG funds near the MLK Community Center, kind of in a rectangular block just south of the MLK Community Center. There are some needed water and sewer improvements in that vicinity that we've recently become well aware of, and so we added that as a potential candidate. It's not been on our radars, but we have undersized water mains in that area, and we also have just lack of sewer system capabilities to some of the lots. And before we put asphalt down, it would be important for us to get utilities underneath that asphalt. Long sidewalk extension from Lowe's Fort Park west to 266th as a project that's come up with a lot of discussion related to new development. That the new development that's going out that way has proposed some pretty significant road improvements and some significant sidewalk improvements, but this would be a sidewalk that that interconnects with that. Southwest Newberry roadway improvements, the entire quadrant, and I have a map that shows these quadrant of town between CSX Railroad, State Road 45, State Road 26, and the housing development, Oakview Village. There's a whole area in there. It's got more hills than you would imagine. That we have quite, if we have drainage problems in Newberry, I know you have to say that with an asterisk next to it, that, well, the minimal drainage problems we have, that is one area where we do. We've had some road degradation, and we do have water ponding across roads from time to time because of topography. We think that'd be an ideal candidate to spend CRA funds to go ahead and clean up, dress up, and that's an example of a project where we could put in sidewalks, do some drainage work, do some street lighting, and let folks that are living in that part of the community see what the advantages of being in a CRA are. Northeast Newberry roadway, similar type project as I just described. This would be on the east side of State Road 45 behind Hitchcock's in that neighborhood. It's probably not as in great a need for drainage improvements, but if we're going to go in there and do roadway corridor type works, we'd catch street lights, we'd catch the drainage, and potentially some sidewalks in that area. Just a very generic downtown sidewalk improvement program where we try to get as many sidewalks as we can within the CRA district. Similarly, street lighting, and then the ladder streets improvements that the commission has spoken to. We think that the majority of ladder street sections would be completed by FDOT when they do the upgrade, but we could get ahead of FDOT on the road segments that they don't intend to touch, and then as an idea to the commission that we start at State Road 26 and just begin extending upgrading those roadway segments as you go away from State Road 26, getting first one block out and then two and then three, and we could take on 2, 3, or 4 street segments every year with funding through the CRA so that, we think that on a 20-year horizon, we've made a lot of headway in terms of improving our downtown street district. So candidate projects that we came up with, here's kind of a map that shows where each of them are proposed. The green section there in the upper left is the water and sewer improvements in the region of the Martin Luther King Center. The orange shaded is the southwest street improvements. The blue shaded is the northeast street improvements. And then you can see southwest 250. It's 254th. It is 254th. No matter what I had in the previous list, I had 254. I had it right. 254. The red is northwest 260th, and then that white one that's going east and west is the sidewalk project from Lois Fort Park out to 266. So those are candidate projects. We're certainly not limited to that, and I would again remind the commission that in terms of, we'll get another crack for next fiscal year as we go through the budget process. For this fiscal year, we believe that really what we're talking about is getting some conceptual designs for the commission to authorize whether or not they would prefer staff to move into a full-blown design for next year is probably what we have time and budget for this year. And you could rank them and we'd get started on those that we can this year, or the commission could say, save it all up and we'll talk about it over the summer and we'll get started next year.
Mike, and this may be a question for Brian, but in the CRA, there's categories of things we can spend the money on,
Absolutely.
right? But all of these seem like infrastructure.
Agreed.
Do we have a candidate list of projects for the other categories, like historic preservation?
Mr.
Well, I
Mayor,
can't remember what all the other categories are, but it seems like we had economic development programs, we had historic preservations, we had infrastructure. I guess my concern is if we spend all the money on this, what's left over for the other categories? And I can't, we've only had 2 meetings like this so far, so what did we set in each bucket?
Mr. Mayor, the projects that the city manager is proposing are above and beyond what the CRA board has already adopted in the budget. So in the currently adopted budget, there is funding for facade grants. There's money for some studies of the downtown area for enhancements of our downtown landscaping. So there are other projects in those categories that are already identified in your currently adopted budget. These projects are for the new money.
So the proposal is to spend all the new money on infrastructure, not to also divvy up the new money into different areas?
Well, it's up to the CRA board. We asked the city manager to come up with ideas, and the city manager likes infrastructure projects, so that's what you get. But the board could absolutely decide to spend the money in one of those other buckets. There is a caveat. I'm not sure if I remember what it is, but we have to spend a certain percentage on infrastructure due to our agreement with the county.
I mean, I'm not opposed to infrastructure, but the Planning and Zoning Board and the HAR Board have been very focused lately, and a lot of it is precipitated on the house that came down by the church, on how are we working on historic preservation in a proactive way. And one of the things I've said to them is, well, we have CRA now, right? So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but we do have some monies available. I don't know what the right split is for those, but it seems to me like that should be part of the consideration. So I think that the new money should be split up. I think that the majority should go to infrastructure, but there should be some considerations for historic preservation, economic incentive. So is there a timeline on when this decision has to be made? I know you just said we have a 0.5% percentage, and I hear you saying we really couldn't get any of these done, but we could get a head start. So it kind of sounds to me like we should just sort of hold and put this all into the budget cycle so we can think about it a little bit more holistically?
Mr. Mayor, we do need to adopt the budget amendment tonight. You don't need to give us specific
Projects.
If we want to schedule another CRA meeting, come back and discuss it. But I do need to amend the budget to account for the increase in revenue.
Okay, so what, if we want to not actually do projects have to be identified in the resolution? Or it just says we've got this much more money?
What your budget amendment would essentially be is a revenue-only amendment. You'd increase your revenue without increasing your expenditures.
Okay, I mean, what does the what does the CRA board want to do? Do you want to move forward on some of these? Do you want to just say break down and spend 60% on infrastructure projects, 20% on, I just don't know what those things look like. So I hate talking in generalities without knowing, what we're talking about. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Do you have any kind of preservation things in mind, or?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, and one of the things I think that we should be doing, and I know this is gonna trigger some folks up here, but I think we need help figuring out how to preserve, and that I'm trying not to use the word study, but somewhere in there we need to bring somebody in to tell us. One of the ideas is creating a historic district HOA, and that's not the right, but that type of a system where if you buy in the historic district, you pay an additional amount, and that's used inside the historic, like an HOA does their fees. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know what that looks like. That's one idea. I think that at some point in time, we should be thinking about hiring a CRA director and make part of that job description historic preservation, because most CRA directors tend to have a fairly extensive background also in historic preservation. I don't know that we're ready to do that at this moment, but I think that should be part of the conversation, because that in that scenario, now we have one person who has some expertise. So instead of necessarily having to pay for a study and someone outside tell us how do you preserve these buildings, you have somebody that's working within the community to do it. I think the problem that we're having is by the time it gets to you guys, by the time it gets to the HAR, by the time it gets to any of us, we always end up in the same spot. Someone says, hey, I bought it. It cost me $300,000 to fix it. I don't have the money. It's got termites. And it's got to come down. And at that point, you're kind of too late. So how do we begin working with people ahead of time? So I don't have any. That's kind of the level of the specificity that I have. I think funding a Newberry Historic Society, that generates a group of people who now have a vested interest in historic preservation, and they can work on things like historic markers, educational materials for elementary schools, promotional videos that tell the story of buildings or people or events. So I think all of those kinds of things are part and parcel. The Christmas initiative has probably been the most successful economic initiative that we've done. So I'd like to see us, if we got more monies, put a little bit of that, a small percentage, 5-10% of it, the new money's towards that. So I'm not against any of these. I think all of these are great. If we want to move forward with these, I would suggest pick one or two out of each of those color-coded areas so that every part of town gets a little something. But it also seems to me like we may just need to let the money sit there for a while till we figure out how we want to fairly break it up into each of these categories.
I agree with that.
And move forward.
I'd like to see some historic preservation.
Yeah.
Kind of research the buildings and give a insight onto their history.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, just to offer that's also what you and Monty have suggested is exactly the type of project that we could get initiated this fiscal year with some direction. We could meet with some people that do that, some firms that do that, get an idea of, what's involved. There's usually an RFP involved, but we could put the wheels in motion, and the heavy lifting would just come next fiscal year.
All right, so what do we need to do
Mr.
now
Mayor.
for this?
I just wanted to remind the board as well that we did receive a historic preservation grant this year to do a historic study of our downtown. I believe we got bids back about a week or two ago, so we should be getting that process pretty soon. It's about a $30,000 grant from the Department of Historic.
How would that tie into what we're talking about today? Is that, because that's very pointed and specific at what that grant's gonna pay for. Does that give us the holistic, here's our historic districts and our historic buildings and?
I'll defer to Brian, but I believe it's a survey of the whole district.
It's a survey of the whole district and the properties that qualify, structures that qualify.
Yeah. I mean, we've got the light plant, we've got the jails, we've got the doc's office over here, which is gonna probably take 7 figures to get it looking like it should look at some point in time. We've got historic buildings in this area right here that, you know, are gonna need attention. So I think that's great that grant's coming, but I think that's not gonna be exactly what we're considering here, so.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of pops in my mind is like the Norfleet's, Norfleet's house and.
Yeah.
And, Don Williams' house right beside it, and then Austin Smith's old house on that block over. I'd hate to see anything happen to those houses.
So to the commissioner's question, that to me sounds like still we need to pause on this conversation right now, right? Let's lay out in these 3 buckets, infrastructure, historic preservation, economic development, how much do we want to allocate to each one, and then we see how much money's in each one, and then we can talk about what we want to do with that much money, right? So the RFP to go out, is there a financial consideration at this stage, or can we just amend the budget to recognize the new revenue, acknowledge that we want to work on historical preservation and get that ball rolling without actually spending any money at this point? Because we already have historic preservation in the mission statement, right?
Mr. Mayor, yes, you can amend the budget to recognize the new funds without allocating the corresponding expenses. It'll just roll into your CRA fund balance.
And then just give direction to the CRA director that historic preservation is gonna be part of the CRA board's questions, comments, considerations, and we wanna figure out how best to go about that.
Right.
You got thoughts down there, Commissioner Coleman?
100% to go towards, for me, it's for, repairs of the roads and the infrastructure, if I can get away with it. Especially the east side of town,
North side?
north side of town, sorry.
Any other thoughts you want? I mean, we're down 2 commissioners,
Yeah.
2 board members. So let's do the amendment to reflect the new revenue. Brian, were you trying to get in? Amendment to reflect the new revenue. I got 1 commissioner that wants to up what we're thinking about historic. I got 1 that wants all to go to infrastructure. You got
50-50. How about that?
Okay, so I think we're gonna do something in historic, we're gonna do something in economic development. I'll work on the commissioner down there, he's gotta give a little bit, right? 5% for each category, something, right? So how do we read this into the motion? Do you have a suggested motion slide? Or you got another comment?
We got part B of the presentation, but yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Round 2 of candidate.
given the level of discussion or the area of discussion, I might suggest staff can come back in the next commission meeting, have another CRA board, and it can outline all the different areas in the plan.
Yeah.
And then that would give you a better idea of where you might want to put some money in different pots. Infrastructure is definitely a big component. That was also the county's desire, was to have most of the money spent in infrastructure. But there are several other, there's affordable housing, there's economic development, there's, we'll outline all of that for you so that you.
We need to move back to Mayo.
And right now, how did
We
the
don't have a
commission
CRA over
differentiate the
there.
pots, you remember? Because I mean, I want to say it's like 75% infrastructure, and then about 25% takes up all the other little things. Because there wasn't much going into any of the other pots, but
Honestly, I would have to confirm that because in my mind, the only percentage I'm thinking of is it limited the amount that could be spent towards administration costs at 30%
I'm just trying,
maximum.
because we had,
So-
those were the three pots that I could remember, and I remember the bulk of it going into infrastructure, but I remember we had some going into
The,
economic incentives.
the general plan was written broadly enough that you could fit almost anything that you wanted to put in it, into it, within reason, so.
Okay, all right, so is there a recommended,
I recommend that we not do it on a commission night next time and maybe do like a 1 hour, special meeting during the week. Instead of, cause this here you can get real deep in the woods.
yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that especially right now, at the beginning of our CRA, as we're kind of figuring these things out, I wanna feel like I have more time to ask some questions and
Exactly.
think about some things, and when it gets to be 10 o'clock at night, I feel more rushed to get it over with. than you were going through all those, Mike, and I was like, man, this is gonna take forever. You know, we're gonna be arguing over 1 and 3 and 2 and
Yeah.
4, you know?
And it's gonna happen, when that comes up, it's gonna happen.
Right.
We're all gonna be back and forth.
Yeah, so, and I think when we think about things like that, I almost need sort of a map for each one of what's
Right.
going on, and,
I also would suggest that we get from staff the top 3.
prioritize it.
Yeah,
Yeah. If, and I think that along those lines of future feedback, if we have candidate projects, what do y'all think about? There needs to be something in each quadrant, cause what I don't wanna do is we spend all the money in one section and nobody else sees it. I also think that right now with the CRA, I'd like to see some really visible projects, right? I want the
Roads.
point to see something. That's the impact fee. See, that's why we're balancing, right? Like all of these projects, some of them are visible, but a lot of them are infrastructure that you're not really gonna see. I think the facade grant out here, that's something we're gonna say, see how the buildings look good, all right? You don't have a tree growing out of the doc's office, CRA. See how the sidewalks look good, CRA. You know, that kind of a thing where we can point to it.
newly paved roads on the north side of town is imperative.
I'm glad you voted yes on impact fees then.
Okay,
There you
that's
go.
where it goes, that's where it goes.
And the CDBG grant that's paving all those roads. That's why, see, it's holistic. That's what I was trying to tell the residents. Holistic. But we can just talk about one thing at a time. Did I get a recommended motion somewhere? Is that coming up? Is there a,
My request, not to be an attorney, would be move to approve the resolution recognizing the revenue only.
is that your recommendation? Move to approve resolution recognizing the revenue amendment only.
Perfectly
what you said?
acceptable.
Perfect.
Move to approve.
We got a motion from Commissioner Coleman, he came alive, seconded by Commissioner Mazon. Comments, question on the motion on the floor from the dais? Comments, question on the motion on the floor from the public? Hearing
We
none.
should probably read the or the resolution.
We
first.
didn't do that already.
You guys are moving so fast.
I tell you, man, you
just
didn't have the formula
launched.
memorized, and then you didn't read this. All right.
I
all
know.
right. Well, you read that into the record for us.
This is resolution, CRA Resolution 2023-01, resolution of the Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to its budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing for severability, approving amendments to the fiscal year 2022-2023 CRA budget, providing an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, seconded by Commissioner Mazon. No public comment. All those in favor, say aye. Commissioner Coleman.
Tell the clerk, the Madam Clerk, what that actual item is, cause I don't think she actually got it.
The actionable item?
Yeah,
motion to approve.
CRA 2023-01.
but for something only.
Oh,
Recognizing revenue.
There you go.
Yeah, revenue only.
recognizing revenue only. All right,
Just looking out for her. I
Did
could tell she was confused.
we've been talking a lot like fast. Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, Brian? Facade grants.
gotta stay to the end, buddy. No, I don't. You gotta suffer. Oh. Eat that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, the commission did direct staff to go back and come up with a facade grant program outline. So that's what I'm presenting here tonight. If the commission likes what they see, we'll move forward with it and finalize everything. If they want to add things or withdraw things, we'll take those notes and we'll do that as well. Basically the purpose of the Community Redevelopment Agency is redevelopment and revitalization of Newberry's urban core within the CRA district, which leads to higher property values over time, which then refunds the TIF fund. The commercial facade program is designed to incentivize our brick and mortar businesses, give them a little extra push. They might want to redo their facade, but might not have quite enough funds to do it themselves. And this gives them the extra oomph to go ahead and move forward with it if they can afford half of it. And also, the intent is to create that more welcoming environment, to create a better place for people to go in the downtown area, spend their time, spend their money, support our Newberry businesses. So, how would the proposed projects be evaluated? Is it going to promote economic development? Is it going to be an overall improvement to the general aesthetic or streetscape improvements? Or is it going to have some kind of a historic preservation or commercial structure component? So eligibility-wise, there's a long list of criteria here. Obviously, have to be, number one, you need to have a facade that's visible from one of our corridors, either State Road 26 or State Road 45. They have to be obviously located within the district because all funds have to be spent only within the district. They have to have a current business tax receipt. It's kind of the general stuff. You have to be a business that's operating legally, that's a viable business, can't have past due property tax bills and that kind of thing. It has to be a conforming business. So if you have, Newberry has quite a few legal non-conforming uses, things that have been there forever and they've just been grandfathered in, that would not qualify. They would need to be, and the reason being, legal non-conforming uses by our code are not allowed to be expanded upon. And so we wouldn't want to expend CRA funds on an expansion of a legal but non-conforming use. We want those eventually to become conforming. Has to be privately owned, structurally sound, meet general building code. That's not current building code, especially for historic buildings. There are exceptions to the modern code. I think if you don't take down any larger than 50%, you can still go with your previous, what it was built under for the most part. It does have to meet some ADA requirements. So basically, no vacant buildings unless they're moving towards occupying. Like I said, it has to be legally constituted, and if the applicant's not the owner, they have to have permission from the owner to make the changes to the building. As proposed, it would cover a minimum of $500 and a maximum of $5,000, so your total project cost would be between $1,000 and $10,000. Like I said, it could pay up to a maximum of 50% of the eligible costs. They do have to pay for the facade improvements first and then get reimbursement. They could be approved for the grant program so that they know that they're going to get that money back, but they have to pay it out front, in total, and then get a rebate, refund of what they've spent. And obviously, it's funded annually by approval of the budget with the CRA board, you folks. If we do expend the funds, then you always have the option to come back and add additional funding. This year it's funded at $15,500. I believe Dallas said that with the additional funds that we came into, we probably bumped that up to about $30,000, almost double it. So qualifying costs is real simple. It's your labor. It's your hired contractors, subcontractors, or any other entity that's licensed or qualified to do the work, and your materials. non-qualifying projects, there's a few things there, but primarily it's, you can't be the owner or the leasee that's going to make those improvements and then charge your time against it. You're welcome to work on it all you want to, but you can't charge for your time as the owner or applicant. Some examples of potentially eligible projects. I won't go through all of those, but it's what you might expect on a facade improvement. And then some examples of ineligible projects. Of course, anything you've done prior to applying for the grant wouldn't qualify. Roofs are not part of the facade, so that wouldn't count. Nothing interior. It's supposed to be an exterior aesthetic improvement, general maintenance, and that kind of thing. So the recommended motion would be to approve the draft facade grant program, or provided staff with additional direction to modify the program. I went through it quickly. There's a little bit more detail in your backup documentation. So hopefully that gives you the general feel for how the program would operate.
Okay, questions of Brian? Is there a stipulation that the CRA can't pay the whole thing? It has to be a matching?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's the general practice, because in general, you want the business to have skin in the game. You don't want to provide the whole thing towards it. They need to be contributing as well, but that's up to the board. There's no legal prohibition against it.
And how will the businesses know that we're doing this? Are we walking up and down the street, or are we saying, hey?
Basically, Mr. Mayor, yes, if and when this is approved by the board, staff's going to put together flyers. We're going to put together some posters, do mail outs to the list of businesses that we have that would qualify in terms of their location.
And I apologize if it's getting late and this was in there, but let's say, so I'm down here and I want to clean up the front of my building and I want to put a new overhang. Does the CRA board get to say, these are the styles, colors, models that are approved, or we pay for half of whatever the business owner wants?
They'll present the project, and then it'll be reviewed by the board and approved by the board.
So it's and the board could say, well, that really doesn't, that's hot pink, and it's a strange shape, and it doesn't look like a historical. It's got to conform to the historic districts.
Yes, sir.
Already, right?
Yes. Okay. It would have to conform with the design standards for the historic district that are in place, or if it's outside the historic district, then it would be the corridor design standards.
Well, I would say we try it out, and if we don't have good feedback from it, or we don't get a lot of participation, maybe we look at changing the percentage and it's 75-25. But I get a lot of questions about pressure washing these buildings, cleaning up these buildings, getting the trees and the grass growing out of them, and all those kinds of things. And I don't know how much that costs to have somebody pressure wash the docks. The building is 3 stories high. But I know right now, I think a lot of businesses are concerned. So if it's $10,000 and they got to pay the whole thing, that might be a stumbling block for them. They don't even move forward. So, but I agree that everybody should have skin in the game. But let's see how it goes. And if nobody's taking advantage of it, let's figure out a different way to get people to actually start cleaning up these buildings, make them look nice. Anybody think of any questions? Got any feedback? Okay, are we looking for a motion to approve the draft CRA facade? Do we have any additional elements to modify? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth.
Second.
I got a second from Commissioner Coleman. And we didn't have a resolution to read in this time. All right. All public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And you got any comments?
No, sir.
Not
Appreciate it.
waving this at you.
I'm not going to comment. I'm not saying a word.
CRA attorney, you got any comments? CRA clerk, you got any comments? CRA board, you got any comments?
No.
We are adjourned.